the dessert always began in silence. Not the kind of silence one meets in a quiet room, but a vast, unending hush that seemed to hum with hidden life. The sands rolled outward in waves, golden by day and silver beneath the moon. Travelers who dared cross it often spoke of mirages, whispers, and shapes moving on the horizon. Yet, for centuries, no map had ever named the small village that stood at its edge. It was a place spoken of only in half-finished stories, in the pauses between conversations, as if to utter its name too loudly might awaken something ancient. On a late evening, beneath a sky painted with streaks of orange and violet, a lone traveler walked toward this forgotten edge. His boots were heavy with sand, his cloak coated in dust, yet his eyes, tired as they were, carried a strange spark of determination. The desert wind tugged at his scarf, lifting grains of sand into the air, making the horizon shimmer like liquid glass. And there, almost hidden against the backdrop of shifting dunes, the first outline of the village appeared. It did not announce itself like a city of grandeur. No tall towers, no gates, no banners, just low houses shaped from clay, their walls blending seamlessly with the earth around them, as if the village had grown directly from the sand. Thin columns of smoke drifted lazily upward, hinting at hearths within. The scent of distant bread mixed with the dry wind, faint yet undeniable. The traveler paused, planting his lantern into the sand beside him. The flame flickered, catching the glint of his weary eyes. He whispered softly to himself, "So it is real." For weeks he had heard rumors of this place, a settlement that appeared ordinary by day but came alive with strange stories by night. Some said its people vanished into dreams when the moon rose. Others claimed the village was cursed, caught between waking and sleeping, where time itself slowed. Most dismissed it as desert folklore, but the traveler, guided by an unexplainable pull, had followed the whispers here. As he stepped closer, the world grew oddly still. The wind softened until even the sound of shifting sand disappeared. It was as if the desert itself was holding its breath, watching his arrival. When he entered the village, the first thing he noticed was the quietness. A settlement should hum with life, the chatter of neighbors, the clatter of tools, the call of children at play. But here, though he saw people moving, women drawing water from a well, an old man sweeping his doorstep, children chasing one another through narrow alleys, there was no sound. Their lips moved, their footsteps stirred dust, but the air carried no echo. It was life performed in silence, like a play behind invisible glass dot. The traveler slowed, his heartbeat loud in his chest. He touched his own ear, wondering if fatigue had robbed him of hearing. But when the lantern at his side clinked against his belt, he heard its soft metallic ring clearly. His senses were intact. It was the village that was muted, as though the desert had stolen its voice. A woman passed him, balancing a clay pot on her head. She gave him a fleeting glance, her eyes unreadable, neither unkind nor welcoming, but heavy with something else, something he could not yet name. Before he could speak, she turned down another alley, vanishing into the maze of clay walls. The traveler's steps echoed faintly as he pressed on. His boots left shallow prints in the sandy streets. Above him, the sky deepened into twilight, stars already beginning to reveal themselves one by one. The village seemed caught in that fragile in-between light, not day, not night, but something suspended, waiting. At last, he reached the central square. It was little more than an open space with a dry well at its center, stones worn smooth by generations. Around it stood low houses with flat roofs, some crumbling, others carefully maintained. At the far end, a small shrine faced the square, its door shut tightly, lanterns unlit. The traveler lowered himself to sit on the well's edge, his cloak pulling around him. He ran a hand across the stone, feeling grooves carved into its surface, symbols, some familiar, some alien, etched deep as though meant to last forever. He traced them slowly with his fingertips, their meaning unknown but their weight undeniable. The lantern by his side pulsed with a faint glow. Its flame flickered though no wind touched it. For a moment, he thought he heard something almost like a sigh rising from the well below. He leaned closer, but all that met him was the dark, a hollow that seemed deeper than stone alone could hold. When night finally fell, the traveler felt the village shift. The silence did not lift. Instead, it deepened, folding in on itself until it became something else. The quiet was no longer absence, but presence, a hum that lived beneath the skin, making his heart beat slower, his breath draw longer. Shadows stretched differently, not hostile but watchful. The lanterns lit by the villagers glowed brighter than oil alone should allow, their flames tinted silver, as if moonlight itself fed them. Children no longer played in the alleys. They stood in doorways, eyes reflecting lantern light, watching him with a stillness beyond their years. The old man with the broom no longer swept. He leaned against his wall, gaze fixed on the horizon as though expecting something to arrive. The traveler tightened his grip on his lantern. He felt the desert's gaze again, vast, patient, eternal. He understood now why this village had no name on maps. It was not meant to be found by chance. It was meant to be sought, to be entered only by those who listened closely enough to the whispers that led them here. And he had listened. From the shadows of the shrine, a door creaked open. For the first time since stepping into the village, the traveler heard a sound not his own. It was faint, ancient, and carried with it the weight of long-kept secrets. He rose slowly, lantern in hand, and stepped toward the shrine. Whatever lay inside would be the beginning of the story the desert had brought him here to learn. The shrine's door opened with a groan, slow and deliberate, as though it had not moved in many seasons. The traveler paused at the threshold, lantern lifted, casting a pale circle of light across the worn entrance. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of dust, herbs, and something older like parchment left too long in a chest. He hesitated, glancing back at the square. A few villagers lingered in the shadows, watching. They did not step forward, nor did they retreat. Their faces were unreadable masks, lit faintly by silver lanterns. Not a word escaped their lips. It was clear they were waiting to see whether he would enter. The traveler drew a slow breath, then stepped inside. The shrine's chamber was smaller than he expected. Clay walls curved inward, meeting at a domed ceiling, soot-stained from old fires along the walls, shelves carved from stone-held jars, bowls, and bundles of dried herbs tied with twine. A low altar stood at the far end, draped in faded cloth, embroidered with symbols similar to those etched into the well outside. The lantern light shimmered across them, making the shapes seem to shift spirals, curling, lines stretching. As though alive in the glow dot in the center of the altar sat an object unlike the rest. A clay vessel sealed with wax, its surface marked by grooves that spiraled downward. The traveler stepped closer, his breath slowing, as though the very air of the chamber compelled him to quiet. He set his lantern on the altar's edge and brushed the vessel gently with his fingertips. It was cool, unnaturally so, as though it carried the chill of a place untouched by sun. When his skin met the grooves, a faint hum rose not from the jar, not from the room, but from deep within himself, vibrating in his chest like the echo of a distant drum. The traveler pulled back, startled. The hum faded. He stared at the vessel for a long moment, then leaned closer, whispering softly, "What are you?" The jar, of course, did not answer, but the silence that followed carried weight, as though the desert itself had paused to listen. A sound broke the stillness. Soft footsteps at the doorway. He turned sharply, lantern raised, and saw a child standing there, barefoot, no older than 10, with hair falling across curious eyes. The child did not speak, but instead lifted a finger and pointed to the jar, then to the traveler, as though connecting them. The traveler lowered the lantern slightly. "Do you know what this is?" he asked gently. His voice echoed too loudly in the small space. The child blinked but made no reply. Instead, they turned and slipped back into the night, the door creaking softly shut behind them. The traveler exhaled, tension easing only slightly. He glanced back at the vessel. Its spiral grooves seemed to shimmer faintly, as if reflecting light that wasn't there. When he left the shrine, the square was empty. The villagers who had been watching were gone, their doors closed, lanterns extinguished. The well sat in silence. The wind had stilled, and above, the stars had gathered thickly, more vivid than he had ever seen. The village seemed swallowed by a hush so profound it pressed against his ears. The traveler made his way to the edge of the square, searching for a place to rest. He found a small guest house, its wooden door half open. Inside, a single mat lay, rolled in a corner, and beside it, a small clay lamp already lit as though waiting for him. He unrolled the mat and settled down, lantern close at hand. His body begged for rest, but his mind buzzed with unanswered questions. Why was the village silent? What was the jar in the shrine? And why had the child connected him to it? Sleep came slowly, like the tide pulling him under. That night, the traveler dreamed. It began with the sound of wind, not harsh, but steady, rhythmic, like breathing. He found himself standing at the village square again. Though it looked different, the well was new, its stones unbroken, and people moved about with laughter and song. He heard their voices clearly, warm and alive, filling the air with joy. At the center of the square stood the same child who had pointed to the jar, but here, their eyes glowed with something strange, reflecting the desert moon like silver mirrors. They lifted a hand, pointing toward the horizon, where dunes stretched endlessly. The traveler followed their gesture and saw something remarkable. Across the sands, a caravan approached, not of camels and merchants, but of shadows, tall and slow, moving like a river. Their figures were indistinct, half flesh, half light, shimmering like heat mirages. Each carried lanterns, flames glowing silver, identical to the villagers' lanterns. As they drew closer, the traveler felt the same hum from the shrines, jar vibrate through the ground, up into his chest. The child turned to him, lips parting as if to speak, but no words came, only a whisper carried by the wind. Listen. The dream dissolved before he could ask more. The traveler woke abruptly, his breath shallow, heart beating fast. The lamp beside him still burned, its flame steady and unnaturally bright. He glanced toward the window. The night outside was absolute, thick with starlight, but no sound came from the village. Only the echo of the dream lingered. Listen, he pressed a hand to his chest. The hum from the jar still seemed to live faintly within him, resonating with every heartbeat. He lay back on the mat, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. He understood one thing now. The village was not silent by accident. Its silence was a story waiting to be heard, and somehow, he had already stepped into it. The first rays of dawn painted the clay walls in amber and gold. The desert, though harsh and unforgiving, had a way of making mornings look sacred. The traveler stirred from restless dreams, eyes heavy, yet mind restless with questions. The small lamp beside him had extinguished sometime during the night, leaving only a curl of smoke, but sunlight had already slipped in through the thin window, outlining dust motes as they danced lazily in the air. He rose slowly, joints stiff, from the mat, and stepped outside. The village was alive, or so it seemed at first glance. Women moved gracefully between houses, carrying jars of water balanced atop their heads. Men tightened ropes on carts or arranged bundles of herbs on wooden trays. Children darted through alleys with quick steps, their laughter painted on their lips. Though again he noticed with unease he could not hear their voices. Their gestures were animated, their movements lively, yet the air carried nothing. Silence reigned, broken only by the faint crunch of sand beneath his own boots. The traveler paused near the square, watching. A group of villagers gathered at the well, forming an orderly line. Each lowered a clay vessel, drew water, and passed it along without speaking. Their faces held no obvious distress, yet neither did they carry joy. It was as though emotion had been drained, leaving behind masks of stillness. He stepped closer, hoping to catch an expression, a spark of humanity. A young woman glanced at him briefly while tying a bundle of dried flowers. Her gaze lingered, only for a heartbeat, before she turned away, resuming her task. Another villager brushed past him, carrying firewood. The traveler murmured a polite greeting, but no reply came, not even a nod. It was not hostility, he realized. It was restraint. This silence was not absence, but a choice. The traveler wandered deeper into the village, lantern tucked beneath his arm. As the morning light warmed the narrow alleys, he noted details he had missed in the half-darkness of the previous night. Symbols etched into doorframes, faint spirals carved into wooden beams, and small clay charms hanging beside every entrance. Some resembled eyes, others the shape of hands, and a few were worn so smooth they looked like mere stones. He paused at one such doorway, running his fingers across a spiral etched into the frame. Its grooves felt deliberate, layered with intention, as if carved not once, but many times, generations deep. Protection, a voice whispered behind him. The traveler turned sharply, startled. An old man stood there, leaning on a wooden staff. His skin was weathered like dried leather, etched with lines carved by sun and time. His eyes, however, were sharp, gleaming with quiet wisdom. He was the first villager to speak since the traveler's arrival. "Did you say protection?" the traveler asked cautiously. The old man nodded, his lips curling into a faint smile. "For the nights His voice was raspy, brittle as dried reeds, but it carried weight. The traveler leaned in, eager for more. Why is it so quiet here? Why do the others not speak? The old man's gaze shifted toward the square, then back to the traveler, because words belong to the day. And here, the day is short. He tapped his staff lightly against the ground, as though sealing the sentence. Before the traveler could ask further, a group of villagers approached carrying baskets. The old man's smile faded. He straightened, withdrew into himself, and without another word, shuffled away into an alley, disappearing into the shadows. The traveler was left standing, heart pounding. He had finally heard a voice, but its meaning only deepened the mystery. By midday, the village was bathed in heat. The sun rose mercilessly, pressing down with a golden weight that shimmered off the rooftops. The traveler retreated beneath an awning, grateful for shade. Villagers continued their quiet tasks, but he noticed how their movements grew slower as the sun climbed. Not the natural fatigue of heat, something else. As if they were conserving themselves for the night. A child skipped past, a small clay doll clasped in her hand. She stopped a few paces away, turned, and looked directly at him. For the briefest moment he thought he heard the faintest sound, a hum, soft and low, like a lullaby sung behind glass. Then it was gone. The child slipped into the crowd and vanished. The traveler pressed his fingers to his temple. The hum was the same one he had felt from the jar, the same that echoed in his chest during the dream. It lived here, woven into the people, the stones, the very air. He thought of the old man's words, for the nights as evening approached. The village changed once more. Shadows lengthened across the sand, stretching like dark rivers. The villagers, without discussion, without even a signal, began preparing. Doors closed softly. Lanterns were lit, their flames glowing with that familiar silver tint, brighter than any ordinary oil should allow. Charms hanging on the doorways swayed gently in the cooling wind, their shapes casting strange silhouettes on the walls. The traveler returned to the square, drawn once more to the well. The grooves etched into its stone seemed to shimmer in the dimming light. He touched them again, and felt the hum stronger now, pulsing faintly beneath the surface, like a heartbeat trapped in stone. The air thickened, silence deepening as the last of the sun dipped beneath the horizon. The traveler's lantern flickered, its flame brightening unnaturally, as though feeding not on oil but on something unseen. Around him, the village fell into stillness. Every door shut, every window darkened. He was alone in the square, and yet, he knew he was not truly alone. The first sound came like a sigh across the sand, low, distant, carrying with it the chill of the night. The traveler stiffened, clutching his lantern tight. The air seemed to bend, heavy with unseen presence. From the well, he thought he heard the faintest murmur, words not his own, rising like echoes from water that was no longer there. The silence of the village was not empty, it was alive. The traveler shivered, though the night was warm. For the first time, he wondered whether he had truly chosen to come here, or whether the village had chosen him. Night arrived, not as a curtain suddenly dropped, but as a slow tide, rising gently until it swallowed every corner of the village. The desert sky turned black velvet, pricked with 1,000 stars burning brighter than in any city. The moon, swollen and pale, cast its silver glow across the clay roofs and narrow alleys, bathing everything in a dreamlike haze. That the traveler sat at the edge of the square, lantern by his side, watching as the last traces of day slipped away. The silence deepened with the darkness, settling over the village like a second skin. Not a dog barked, not a door creaked, not a single word carried across the air. Only the steady hum of his own breath reminded him he was awake. He thought back to the old man's words, for the night stopped now. As the silver flames of the villagers' lanterns flickered faintly from behind closed shutters, he began to understand. The silence of the day had been restrained to discipline, but the silence of the night was something else entirely. It was alive. That the well in the square seemed to pulse faintly in the moonlight. Its stones glistened as though wet, though no water had touched them in years. The traveler leaned forward, resting a hand against its edge. The hum was stronger now, undeniable. A rhythm pulsed through the stone, like the beating of a distant heart. He held his breath and bent closer. For a moment, he thought he heard something beyond the hum. Voices, soft and layered, rising from the deep. Not sharp words, but blurred syllables, like prayers spoken underwater. His chest tightened. He wanted to pull away, to run from the strange sound, but curiosity held him firm. He stayed there, listening, until the whispers blended with his own pulse, until he could not tell where the sound ended and his own body began. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than before. The traveler stumbled, backlanting rattling in his grip. He glanced around the square. Every shutter remained closed, every door sealed. Yet he could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. He returned to the guest house, closing the wooden door behind him. The room felt smaller now, its single lamp burning with silver light instead of gold. He lay back on the mat, staring at the ceiling, but rest would not come. His mind buzzed with questions, and every time he closed his eyes, he felt that same hum vibrating faintly in his chest. At last, exhaustion dragged him into half-sleep. He dreamed again. In the dream, the village was not silent. It was alive with music, laughter, and the fragrance of bread baking in clay ovens. The people gathered in the square, singing in voices rich as desert winds. Children ran freely, their laughter like bells, while men and women danced in circles, their lanterns glowing gold instead of silver. But then, a shadow crept across the scene. The music faltered, the laughter fell silent. One by one, the villagers turned their faces upward toward the sky. The traveler followed their gaze and saw the moon. It loomed larger, brighter, too close, its surface etched with spirals that seemed to writhe and shift. A low hum filled the air, the same hum he had felt in the shrine, the well, his chest. The villagers raised their lanterns. Their flames turned silver, washing the square in ghostly light. Their mouths moved, chanting words he could not understand. And then, the shadow figures appeared, tall forms walking across the desert, their bodies made of sand and starlight, carrying lanterns that burned with silver fire. They entered the square, merging with the villagers in silence. The two groups living in shadow danced together, their movements slow, ceremonial. The traveler wanted to move closer, to ask who they were, but the child appeared again, the same child from the shrine. Their eyes glowed like the moon, and their voice whispered only one word, stretched across the dream like an echo. Listen. The traveler jolted awake, heart racing. The lamp beside him burned steady, its flame still unnaturally silver. Sweat dampened his brow, though the night was cool. He sat upright, pressing a hand to his chest. The hum was there again, faint but insistent, beating in rhythm with his heart. He rose, restless, and stepped to the window. The village lay outside, bathed in moonlight, silent and unmoving. Not a soul stirred, but in the distance, just beyond the last row of playhouses, the traveler thought he saw something. Shapes, tall, shifting, faint as smoke, moving across the desert's edge. They glimmered under the stars, carrying lanterns that glowed the same silver hue. The traveler froze, breath caught in his throat. The figures did not draw nearer, nor did they vanish. They simply moved, endlessly, like a procession bound by no time. He whispered softly, almost to himself, the shadows from the dream. His voice sounded too loud in the silence. He drew back from the window, heart hammering. Hours passed, though he could not measure them. Sleep would not return. He lay on the mat, staring into the silver flame of the lamp, thoughts spiraling like the grooves on the jar. The old man's words circled in his mind. For the nights. What happened in this village when night fell? Why did the villagers hide behind shutters and charms? And why above all had he been drawn here? The silence offered no answers. Only the hum, steady and relentless, deepened in his chest until it felt like part of him. At last, as dawn's first light began to bleed across the horizon, he closed his eyes. The night had ended, but the questions had only just begun. Morning crept into the silent village like a careful guest, brushing light across rooftops and alleys, still heavy with the weight of the night. The traveler stirred awake, though it felt less like waking and more like surfacing from a depth too deep for comfort. His body was rested, yet his mind was restless, crowded with fragments of dreams and whispers that clung stubbornly to him, like dust he could not shake free. He rolled from the mat and opened the wooden door of the guest house. Outside, the world had shifted again. The night's uncanny stillness had been replaced by measured movement. Villagers moved through the square, their gestures steady and purposeful, yet still no words reached the air. Clay pots clinked softly against one another, baskets brushed against cloth, and the faint swish of sand under sandals could be seen but not heard. It was life in silence. The traveler stepped outside, lantern in hand, Though its flame had burned silver throughout the night, now it flickered gold again, ordinary and warm. He found the change both relieving and unsettling. At the square, villagers once again gathered at the well. Their faces were calm but pale, as though the night had drained them. One by one, they lowered their jars, drew water, and carried it away. Their eyes avoided his. Not deliberately, not with hostility, but as though he were something fragile they dared not disturb. The traveler approached the well, tracing its worn grooves with his fingertips. The hum he had felt the night before had quieted, though not disappeared. It lingered faintly, like an echo after a bell has been struck out. As he stood there, the old man with the staff appeared once more. His steps were slow but deliberate, the thump of his staff marking time against the earth. "You returned," the old man rasped, his voice like dry leaves in the wind. The traveler turned, relief flooding him at the sound of another voice. "I had questions," he admitted, his own voice sounding too alive in the hushed morning. "What is this place? What happens here at night?" The old man studied him with eyes that had seen too much. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, he tapped the edge of the well with his staff. "This village is a threshold," he said quietly, "a door between the living and the echoes of the desert." The traveler frowned. Echoes. The old man's gaze shifted toward the dunes beyond. The houses. Not all who walk the sands find rest when their journey ends. Some linger, their footsteps fade, but their presence remains. The desert remembers everything, and sometimes it gives those memories form. The traveler thought of the procession he had glimpsed from his window, the shifting figures carrying lanterns. His heart quickened. "The shadows I saw," the old man nodded once, slow and heavy. "You have seen them already. Few outsiders ever do." The traveler's pulse raced. "But why the silence? Why do none of you speak?" The old man's mouth curved faintly, though it was not a smile, because words carry weight here. To speak freely is to invite what listens. He leaned closer, lowering his voice until it was almost a whisper. "At night, the echoes hear everything, so we say nothing." The traveler's skin prickled. His mind reeled with questions. But before he could ask more, a group of women approached, carrying baskets filled with herbs. Their eyes flickered toward him, then toward the old man. Without a word, the elder straightened, his staff striking the ground with finality. "Our talk is finished for now," he said, retreating into an alley. The traveler watched him disappear, frustration and awe battling within him. He wanted to chase after him, demand answers, but something held him back. The silence of the villagers, the weight of their stares, the feeling that every step here was already measured, it all pressed against him. Later, as the sun climbed high and the heat pressed down upon the clay walls, the traveler wandered through the village's outer edge. From here, the desert stretched endlessly, dunes rolling into infinity, their edges blurring with the sky. Yet standing at the threshold, he felt the same sensation he had upon first arriving, that the village was not merely built beside the desert, but into it, fused with it, sharing its breath. He crouched to touch the sand, letting the grains spill through his fingers. The hum stirred faintly again in his chest, stronger now under the open sky. He closed his eyes and let the rhythm guide him. For a moment, he thought he could hear voices carried on the wind, whispers of travelers long gone, merchants, wanderers, dreamers, their words bleeding into the present. When he opened his eyes, he saw movement on the horizon, a line of figures, again, tall and shifting, shimmering in the heat. They did not come closer, nor did they vanish. They simply moved, endlessly, as though replaying a journey that had no end. Lanterns glowed faintly even in the bright sun, silver against gold. The traveler's throat tightened. He realized then what the old man meant by echoes. These were not visitors, they were memories, bound to the desert, repeating their steps for eternity. He whispered aloud without meaning to, "How many of you are there?" The figures gave no answer. The wind shifted, carrying sand across the dunes, erasing their outlines, until only the desert remained. The traveler returned to the village with his thoughts heavy and restless. The people continued their silent tasks. Children ran through the alleys, men stacked firewood, women drew water. It was a picture of normal life, yet the absence of sound made every action feel strange, like watching actors perform without voice. By dusk, the square was empty again, shutters closing, lanterns lighting one by one. The traveler lit his own lantern, watching as the flame flickered silver once more. He felt the hum growing, spreading deeper into his bones. The night was coming, and he had begun to understand why silence was their only shield. The sun slipped lower, painting the desert horizon in shades of crimson and gold. The traveler sat at the edge of the square, lantern in hand, watching as the villagers retreated into their homes. One by one, doors closed with soft thuds, shutters sealed tight, and silver flames flickered to life behind every window. The square emptied as though by silent command. Only the well remained in the center, glowing faintly beneath the twilight sky, its spiraled carvings catching the last rays of light. The traveler lifted his lantern. As darkness spread, the flame shifted again, from ordinary gold to that same ghostly silver, brighter now than before. It pulsed gently, in rhythm with his heart, reminding him of the jar in the shrine, and the hum that seemed to follow him wherever he went. He whispered to himself, his voice sounding dangerously loud in the silence. For the nights, the first wind arrived as the last of the light faded. It was not harsh, but cool, carrying with it a faint murmur. The traveler froze, straining to hear. It was not the rustle of sand or the cry of some desert creature. No, it was layered, textured, like many voices overlapping, too faint to understand, but too purposeful to be mistaken for wind alone. The hum in his chest deepened, and for a heartbeat, he felt as though the voices were inside him. He gripped the lantern tightly, grounding himself with its silver glow. Then, movement caught his eye. From the far alleys, villagers emerged once more, not in daylight clothing but draped in simple robes, white and gray, their lanterns held high. They gathered in silence at the square, forming a circle around the well. Their faces were solemn, their gestures slow, almost ceremonial. The traveler crouched in the shadow of a wall, unsure whether he was meant to witness this, yet he could not turn away. One by one, the villagers lifted their lanterns, raising them toward the sky. The silver flames flickered in unison, as though connected by some unseen thread. The air shifted, heavier now, vibrating faintly like the surface of a drum. Without speaking, the villagers bowed their heads, their lips moved in unison, yet no sound escaped. The traveler leaned forward, straining to hear, but only silence met him. Their mouths formed words, prayers perhaps, but the silence held thick, deliberate, unbroken. Then, the hum answered. It rose from the well, from the ground beneath his feet, from the very air itself. A low vibration filled the square, deeper than any human voice, resonating through stone, clay, and bone. The villagers swayed gently, still mouthing words, as if harmonizing with a song only the desert could hear. The traveler's skin prickled. He felt the hum inside him, sinking with his heartbeat until it was impossible to tell which rhythm belonged to him and which belonged to the village. A child stepped forward into the circle, the same child who had pointed to the jar in the shrine. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the silver lanterns. In their small hands, they carried a vessel. Its grooves spiraled like the one the traveler had seen on the altar. The child set the vessel on the edge of the well. The villagers bowed deeper, lanterns trembling in their hands. The hum grew stronger, a wave rolling through the silence. For an instant, the traveler thought he saw shapes in the air above the well, figures, tall and shifting, their edges blurred like smoke, their lanterns glowing silver against the night. The echoes, the same procession he had glimpsed at the desert's edge. The shadows leaned forward as if drawn to the vessel. The child's lips moved. No sound came, but the traveler heard the words not through his ears, but in his mind. We listen so they do not forget. The traveler's breath caught. His lantern flickered violently, silver flame bending toward the well, as though pulled by an unseen current. He stumbled backward, knocking against the wall. Several villagers turned their heads sharply, their silent gazes fixing on him. Their eyes glimmered in the lantern light, not with anger, but with something harder to endure. Recognition. It was as if they had expected him all along. The ritual ended as suddenly as it had begun. The villagers lowered their lanterns, extinguishing the silver glow one by one. The hum subsided, leaving only the whisper of wind across sand. Without a word, the circle dissolved. The child picked up the vessel, cradling it gently before vanishing into the night. The square was empty once more. The traveler stood frozen, heart hammering, lantern trembling in his grip. He felt as though the hum had not left him but settled deeper into his very being. He tried to breathe steadily, but each inhale carried that faint vibration, as if his body had become part of the ritual itself. He whispered again, quieter this time, to no one but himself. What have I stepped into? Back in the guest house, the mat felt colder than before, the silence thicker. The traveler set his lantern beside him and lay down, though sleep would not come easily. His mind replayed every detail: the villagers' silent prayers, the child's glowing eyes, the shifting figures above the well. He closed his eyes, and at once the hum rose again, faint but constant, as though reminding him that the village was never truly silent. This was no ordinary place, and he had crossed into its story. Now, whether he wished it or not, sleep was a fragile thing that night. Each time the traveler drifted close to slumber, the hum pulled him back, like a thread tethering him to wakefulness. At last, when the first hints of dawn softened the horizon, he rose and stepped outside. The square was empty, silent except for the faint creak of ropes as villagers began their morning routines. The silence of the day felt different now, no longer simply eerie but deliberate, like the pause before a truth is spoken. The traveler moved toward the well again, drawn to its spirals. His fingers traced the grooves, and the hum stirred faintly, weaker than at night but still present, like embers beneath ash. "Careful where you linger," a voice said. The traveler turned. A woman stood near him, older than most of the villagers he had seen. Her hair was streaked with silver, her face weathered but stern. Unlike the others, she did not avoid his gaze, her eyes fixed on him with sharp intensity, as though measuring him. "You speak," he said softly, almost relieved. "Few of us do," she replied, her voice low but steady. "And fewer still you should not be here." The traveler swallowed. "Why? What is this place?" The woman's expression hardened. "It is a vessel," she said simply. "The desert's memory. Every grain of sand, every step taken, every life ended out there. This village is where they gather, where they are kept." She nodded toward the well. "That is the anchor. Without it, the echoes would scatter. With it, they linger." The traveler's breath caught. "The figures I saw, the lanterns." She tilted her head, studying him. "You saw them?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, they carried silver lights. They walked as if bound to a path." The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then the desert has already touched you." He hesitated, then asked, "Why the silence? Why the rituals?" Her eyes narrowed, voice dropping to a whisper. "Because sound invites them closer, and words are heavy. They carry meaning. To speak them at the wrong moment is to open a door you cannot close. That is why we save our voices only for what must be spoken, and even then, we choose carefully." The traveler shivered. He remembered the villagers' lips moving in unison, silent prayers, silent songs. The woman leaned closer. "You are not one of us. You should leave before the desert decides you belong here." Her words chilled him. "But why was I drawn here? Why did I find this place at all?" For the first time, her stern face softened. Her gaze moved past him, toward the dunes shimmering in the distance. "Perhaps because you were already listening. The desert does not call those who cannot hear." The traveler opened his mouth to ask more, but she lifted a hand. Her expression was final, her silence heavier than her words. Without another glance, she turned and disappeared into one of the alleys, leaving him alone once more at the well. He stood there, thoughts swirling like the sand in the wind. A vessel, a memory, a place where echoes lingered, and now, according to her, the desert itself had touched him. Later that day, as the sun blazed mercilessly above, the traveler wandered beyond the village edge. The dunes stretched endlessly, golden waves under a sky so wide it felt like an ocean turned upside down. Heat shimmered, distorting the horizon, and for a moment he thought he saw the procession again, shifting figures with silver lanterns, but this time they were closer. Their movements were slow, deliberate, their forms half transparent as though woven from smoke. They carried lanterns that glowed even under the sun, and though no sound reached his ears, he felt the hum rising stronger, matching his heartbeat. The traveler's chest tightened. He stumbled back a step, but the figures did not advance. They continued walking in their eternal line, bound to a path invisible yet certain. He whispered, almost without meaning to, "What do you want?" The figures gave no reply. But in the still air, he thought he heard the faintest echo, his own voice, returned to him, twisted by distance and time. "What do you want? Want." The repetition made his skin crawl. He gripped his lantern tightly, its flame flickering weakly in the bright day, silver at the edges even now. The figures faded into the shimmer, leaving him alone with the echo of his own question. When he returned to the village, the square was already emptying for dusk. Lanterns lit one by one, silver flames flickering against clay walls. The hum began to rise again, faint but insistent, like a tide approaching. The traveler realized then what terrified him most. Not the silence, not the shadows, not even the rituals. What terrified him was how familiar the hum had become, as though it had always been there, as though the desert had only awakened what was already within him. That night, as he lay on the mat staring at the silver flame of his lamp, he thought of the woman's warning, "You should not be here," and yet, he knew with certainty, he was not leaving, not yet, because whatever haunted this village, whatever tied it to the desert, had already entwined itself with him. And to walk away now would be to abandon the answers that hovered just beyond his reach. So he whispered once more into the silence, daring the echoes to listen. "Then show me." The hum deepened in reply. The night unfolded like a scroll, each moment revealing strange inscriptions only the desert could read. The traveler lay awake, silver lantern flickering beside him, when the hum began again. It rose not from the well this time, nor from the walls of the guest house, but from within his chest, stronger than ever before, as if his very heartbeat had been overtaken by the desert's rhythm. He sat upright, sweat glistening on his brow, though the night was cool. The flame of his lantern wavered violently, casting long shadows across the walls. He could not stay inside any longer. Grabbing the lantern, he stepped into the alley. The village lay in silence, silver lights glowing faintly in every window. The square was empty, yet the hum swelled louder, urging him forward. His feet carried him toward the well without his consent, each step heavy but inevitable. When he reached it, the spirals on its stones shimmered, glowing faintly as though etched with moonlight. The hum vibrated through the ground, through the air, through his bones. He leaned over the edge, peering into the depths. At first, there was only darkness. Then, the surface rippled. Images unfolded in the water, not reflections of the square, but visions pulled from somewhere deeper. He saw endless dunes, waves of sand rolling under a black sky pierced with stars. Lanterns moved across the landscape in unbroken lines, carried by shadowy figures whose faces were lost to time. The vision shifted. He saw caravans long gone, traders leading camels heavy with spice and silk, their voices hushed, their footsteps vanishing into dust. He saw nomads circling fires, their laughter bright before silence consumed them. He saw strangers collapsing in the desert, their last breaths taken by the sands. And then he saw himself, standing at the well, lantern in hand, his eyes wide with fear and awe. The traveler staggered back, nearly dropping his lantern. His chest heaved, his heart pounding with the hum. "You called us," a voice whispered, not through his ears, but directly in his mind. He spun around. The square was empty. The voice came again, layered, as if spoken by many at once. "You listened. You heard. You belong." His lantern's flame flared silver white, brighter than ever before, bathing the square in ghostly light. Shadows stretched long across the ground, and from them, figures began to rise tall, shifting half-formed. Their lanterns glowed too, life, echoing his own, silver fire flickering in the windless air that the traveler's breath caught. It was the procession, but now they were here, in the square, surrounding him. Their faces were hollow, blurred, as though carved from smoke, yet he felt their eyes, dozens, hundreds fixed on him. He whispered, his voice trembling, "What do you want from me?" The figures raised their lanterns in unison. The hum grew louder, reverberating through the stones, the air, the very marrow of his bones. His knees buckled under the weight of it, but he held firm. "You listen," the voices said, a chorus vibrating in his skull. "You remember, that is enough." The child appeared again, at the edge of the circle, vessel in hand. Their eyes glowed silver, their expression calm, almost tender. They stepped toward the traveler and held out the vessel. Its spirals gleamed faintly, alive with the same light as the lantern's dot. The traveler hesitated, his fingers trembled, but something deeper than fear guided him. Slowly, he reached out and touched the vessel. The hum surged. Images crashed into his mind, faces, voices, entire lifetimes flashing like lightning. He saw deserts long vanished, cities buried beneath dunes, oceans of caravans stretching across centuries. He felt the grief of those who perished in the sands, the joy of those who crossed them, the longing of those whose footsteps never reached their destination. It was overwhelming, endless. He cried out, though no sound left his lips. Then, silence. He opened his eyes. The square was empty again. No shadows, no procession, no child, only the well, quiet and still, and his lantern burning faintly beside him. His body shook with exhaustion, but a strange calm settled over him. The hum had not left, but it no longer frightened him. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat that was not entirely his own. The traveler looked down at his hands. They trembled, yet they glowed faintly with silver dust, as if the desert itself had brushed against him. He whispered to the silence, "I remember." The desert did not answer, but for the first time, he felt that it had heard. When dawn came, the village returned to its muted life. Villagers moved quietly, their eyes cast down, their gestures careful. Yet when they passed him, they no longer avoided his gaze. Their silence was the same, but something in their eyes had shifted. Recognition, acceptance. The traveler realized then what the woman had warned him of. He was no longer merely a visitor. The desert had touched him. The echoes had marked him. And whether he stayed or left, part of him would always remain here, walking the sands with the lantern bearers, keeping the silence of the nights. The morning, after the vision, felt different. The desert sun still rose in its blazing arc, painting the dunes in fire and gold, and yet the traveler sensed a subtle shift. The silence of the village had changed. It no longer pressed upon him like a weight. It surrounded him like a cloak. He walked through the square with his lantern, though it now burned ordinary gold in the daylight tan. The villagers did not turn away. They did not smile. They did not speak, but their eyes lingered on him longer than before, acknowledgement in their gaze, as though he had crossed a boundary only a few ever reached. The traveler passed a group of children, playing at the edge of the square. They moved their hands in elaborate patterns, tracing shapes into the sand. He paused, curiosity pulling him closer. One of the children looked up and held his gaze for a long moment before continuing their game. The patterns they drew were familiar, overlapping circles, echoes of the carvings on the well. The hum stirred faintly in his chest. He realized, with quiet unease, that he could sense the meaning behind the patterns. They were not mere games. They were fragments of memory, recorded in sand by hands too small to understand the full weight of what they traced. Later that day, the traveler wandered toward the outskirts of the village. The dunes loomed endlessly, shimmering in the heat. He thought of the figures he had seen the night before, lanterns raised, shadows watching, the vessel pressed into his hands. His body still remembered the weight of it, though when he looked at his palms they were empty. At the ridge of a dune, he stopped. The desert stretched before him, vast and quiet, yet he did not feel alone. The hum was always with him now, a companion, sometimes faint, sometimes rising, but never gone. "You will not leave." The voice startled him. He turned sharply. The old man with the staff stood a short distance away, his eyes narrowed, his cloak dragging lightly in the sand. The traveler hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. The old man approached, leaning heavily on his staff. "You have already seen too much. The echoes have marked you. Even if you walk away, you will carry them. The desert will call you back." The traveler's throat tightened. "Why me? I did not come here seeking this. No one ever does," the elder said. His gaze was sharp, but not unkind. "The desert chooses. You listened, and so it answered. That is all." The traveler exhaled slowly, the truth settling over him like sand filling a footprint. That night, he returned to the square with his lantern, though no one had summoned him. The villagers gathered again, silent and solemn, their silver flames flickering in rhythm. The traveler joined them, standing just beyond the circle. This time, no one turned him away. The hum began, low and deep, rising from the earth. The villagers lifted their lanterns, their lips moved soundlessly, prayers shaped in silence. The traveler felt the pull within him, urging him to move his lips as well. At first, he resisted, frayed, uncertain, but then, almost without conscious choice, he began to mouth the words he did not know, and yet he did know them. The syllables flowed from him without sound, but their weight filled his chest. He felt the connection, the rhythm, the tether between him and the circle, between the villagers and the echoes. The hum deepened. For the briefest moment, he glimpsed the shadow procession again, forming beyond the edges of the lantern light. Countless figures, endless lines, silver lanterns swaying in perfect rhythm. Their presence was heavy, solemn, eternal. And he understood, dimly, what this ritual was. A pact. The living would remember. The dead would not be forgotten. silence would be the bridge. When the ritual ended, the villagers dispersed quietly, their robes fluttering like pale ghosts in the night. The traveler lingered in the square, shaken but strangely calm. The silver flame of his lantern burned steadily, casting long shadows across the stones. He looked at the well, its spirals catching the light. The words the woman had spoken returned to him. This village is a vessel. Now, he realized. So was he. Sleep came easier that night. When he dreamed, it was not of confusion or fear, but of footsteps in sand, steady, endless, accompanied by silver light. He was not an outsider anymore. He walked among them, not as a prisoner, but as a listener. And though the desert stretched vast and unknowable, for the first time, he felt he belonged to its silence. The silence of the next day clung to the traveler like a second skin. He moved through the village, and though no one spoke, their eyes no longer shunned him. Some offered the faintest nods, the smallest tilts of the head, gestures so slight they might have gone unnoticed to anyone else. It was a language beyond words, acknowledgement without sound. By evening, the air felt heavier, thick with anticipation. The traveler sensed something different. This would not be a night like the others. His chest thrummed faintly with the hum, stronger than it had been during the day. It was as if the earth itself was waiting. When dusk gave way to darkness, the lanterns lit again. But instead of gathering in the square, the villagers began to move quietly toward the desert's edge. Lanterns swayed in a slow procession, their silver flames cutting lines of light across the dunes. The traveler followed. The procession led to a hollow between dunes, a shallow basin where the wind had carved shelter from the night. Here, the villagers formed a circle around a mound of stones piled high at the center. The stones were marked with spirals, grooves cut deep and smooth by countless hands. The traveler stood at the outer edge, lantern clutched tightly. His silver flame flickered in unison with the others, as if tethered by invisible threads. One villager stepped forward, a man tall and gaunt, with robes that seemed to ripple like water. He raised his lantern and held it over the mound of stones. The hum swelled. The villagers lifted their lanterns too, raising them toward the desert sky. The traveler felt it before he saw it. The sand around the mound shifted, stirring as though something moved beneath it. Slowly, impossibly, the topmost stones began to slide aside. A faint light seeped through the cracks, pale and ghostly, until the mound itself glowed from within. The traveler's breath caught. Beneath the stones lay not earth, but glass or something like it, a surface smooth, luminous, reflecting silver fire. Shapes moved faintly within it, blurred like shadows seen through water. The gaunt man spoke not aloud, but with lips moving silently, his words caught in the air between sound and thought. The villagers followed, mouths shaping the same prayer, their faces solemn. The hum deepened, vibrating through the traveler's chest. He peered closer at the glowing surface beneath the stones. The shapes inside began to clarify. Faces, hundreds of them, faint, translucent, drifting slowly, as though suspended in an unseen current. Their eyes were closed, their expressions peaceful, yet heavy, as though they carried centuries of memory. The traveler staggered back, his lantern trembling. These were no illusions. These were the lost, the echoes. The gaunt man lowered his lantern, holding it directly above the glass. The figures inside stirred faintly, their eyes fluttering open, not fully just enough to glimmer with silver light. Hum thundered, filling the hollow with soundless weight. The traveler felt his knees weaken. His lantern's flame bent toward the mound, as if drawn by some unseen current. The glass pulsed faintly, and for an instant, he thought he saw his own reflection among the drifting faces. He gasped, clutching his chest. The hum answered, "You listen." The chorus filled his mind. It was not the villagers, it was the faces themselves, speaking as one, voices layered and unyielding. "You hear, you remember." The traveler's heart pounded. He whispered, voice shaking, "What are you?" The figures drifted closer to the surface. Their forms remained blurred, but their lantern-light eyes fixed on him. "We are the desert," the voices replied. "We are the footsteps that vanished, the stories buried, the cries carried away by wind. Here we remain. Here, silence keeps us whole." The traveler's throat tightened. He felt tears prick his eyes, not of fear, but of awe. These were the memories the woman had spoken of, the weight the village carried every night. "Why me?" he whispered. The voices echoed in reply, "Because you listened. Few do, fewer still endure." The ritual continued. Villagers held their lanterns steady, their silent lips forming prayers. The gaunt man lowered his lantern further, until its silver flame almost touched the glowing surface. For a moment, the air thickened, heavy with light. Then the flame pulled back, dimming to its ordinary glow. One by one, the villagers extinguished their lanterns. The mound dimmed, the stones sliding slowly back into place until the light beneath was hidden once more. The hum softened, fading to silence. The hollow returned to darkness. The traveler stood trembling, his mind a storm of questions. He wanted to speak, to demand answers, but he knew words were dangerous here. So he remained silent, clutching his lantern as the villagers dispersed back into the night. Only the gaunt man lingered. His lantern still burned faintly, silver shimmering along its edges. He turned to the traveler, his gaze piercing. "You saw," he said softly. Unlike the others, his voice carried sound. It was dry, rough, as though unused for years. The traveler nodded, unable to form words. The man's expression was grave. "Then you understand. The silence is not emptiness, it is weight, it is memory, and now, it is yours as well." He turned, his cloak brushing the sand, and vanished into the procession of fading lanterns. The traveler remained a moment longer, staring at the mound. Beneath those stones, he knew, countless lives waited, suspended in silence. Their whispers clung to him still, echoing in his mind. When at last he returned to the village, the square seemed different, not just a place of clay walls and lanterns, but a vessel, holding stories that stretched far beyond its boundaries. He lay awake long into the night, the hum within him steady, unyielding, and though fear still lingered, something deeper had taken root, in understanding that silence was not absence, but presence. The desert was alive, and he was no longer merely passing through it. Sleep, when it finally came to the traveler, did not bring rest. Instead, it pulled him into the desert once more, not the endless dunes he had crossed on his journey, but a dreamscape of shifting sands and silver flames. The procession of figures appeared again, moving steadily across the horizon, their lanterns swinging like stars tethered to earth. But this time, as the traveler walked among them, he recognized fragments of faces half familiar, half forgotten. One figure turned its head toward him, and his breath caught. It was a man he had once traveled with on a caravan years ago, a companion lost to a sudden sandstorm. His friend's features blurred like smoke, yet his lantern eyes glowed with recognition. The traveler reached out, trembling. "You're here," he whispered. The figure did not speak, but the hum answered in his chest. "We remain." The traveler staggered back, tears pricking his eyes. He had never known what became of his friend, whether he had found shelter or vanished into the dunes. Now he understood. The desert had kept him. When he awoke, dawn had only just begun to brighten the horizon. He sat on the edge of his mat, lantern still burning faintly beside him. His chest was heavy with grief and wonder. The desert was not only a vessel of nameless voices, it held people he had known, people he had lost. As he stepped outside, he found the square nearly empty, the villagers beginning their quiet morning rituals. The old woman with silver hair stood near the well, her sharp eyes catching his. She studied him for a long moment before approaching. "You saw someone," she said quietly. The traveler swallowed hard. "Yes, a friend, one I thought gone." She nodded, unsurprised. That is how it begins. The desert does not only hold strangers, it holds every memory tied to its sands, every loss, every echo. That is why we are careful not to speak of the past. It stirs the silence, and the silence answers. Her voice softened, though her eyes remained stern. "The more you carry, the heavier it becomes. Do not let it consume you." All that day, the traveler could not shake the vision of his friend's face. He wandered to the outskirts, staring at the dunes, stretching endlessly beyond. He remembered every journey he had taken across deserts, every caravan that had vanished, every companion who had failed to make it through the storms. And now, he wondered, were they all here, somewhere, beneath the sands, walking with silver lanterns in the endless night? The thought was both comforting and terrifying. That night, when the villagers gathered once more, he joined them again. The ritual began as before. Lanterns raised, lips moving silently, the hum swelling like a tide. But for the traveler, the experience was different. When he mouthed the silent words, images filled his mind, not of strangers this time, but of his own memories. His childhood home, distant and faint, his mother's hands, calloused and kind, the laughter of his younger brother, who had died of fever long ago. The lantern's silver flame wavered, and the hum within him deepened, his vision blurred. The figures in the procession stepped closer, surrounding him. Among them, he saw his brother, small, fragile, but glowing with silver light. The boy's lips moved in silence, yet the traveler understood the meaning. "You remember, that is enough." The traveler's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to cry out, to call his brother's name, but no sound came, and he realized if he broke the silence, if he shattered the pact, the fragile connection would dissolve. So he bowed his head, tears slipping quietly down his cheeks, and let the silence carry his answer. When the ritual ended, he lingered long. After the villagers had gone, his lantern's flame burned low, but it pulsed faintly in rhythm with the hum in his chest. The desert had given him something he had never expected, a chance to glimpse what was lost. But it had also placed a weight upon him, heavier than any burden he had carried before. To be a listener was not simply to watch, it was to remember, to hold the voices of the lost within his heart, silently, endlessly. And as he stood there beneath the endless stars, the traveler realized there would be no turning back. The nights bled into one another, each ritual leaving the traveler heavier than the last. The silver flame of his lantern no longer seemed separate from him. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. By day, when the sun burned mercilessly over the dunes, he could feel it thrum faintly in his chest, as if some hidden ember never cooled. The villagers treated him differently now. They did not speak, no one ever did, but their silence had shifted. They watched him with recognition, with a weight that seemed both respectful and resigned. He was no longer a guest, he was one of them. Yet the traveler could not shake the unease growing within him. The first time he had seen the shadow procession, he had felt like an outsider looking in. But now, when they appeared in the corner of his vision during the nightly rituals, he did not just see them, he felt himself among them. His feet ached as if he too had walked across endless dunes. His throat burned with thirst, not his own. His body carried fatigue that belonged to centuries of travelers. Each step imprinted in the silence, and sometimes, when he looked down during the ceremonies, he feared that his shadow stretched differently than it should, longer, thinner, shimmering faintly with silver glow. One evening, the old woman with silver hair approached him as the lanterns were being lit. She carried no flame of her own. Her hands were empty, yet her presence radiated the same power as the others. "You are changing," she said softly. Her voice was as dry as the desert wind, but steady. The traveler stiffened. "What do you mean? You feel it, don't you?" she asked, her piercing eyes searching his. "The silence is heavier in you. The hum is stronger. The echoes cling to you more with each night. That is the way it begins." His throat tightened. "The way what begins?" She held his gaze without blinking. "The way one becomes more echo than flesh." The traveler's breath caught. He wanted to protest, to deny it, but deep within, he knew the truth of her words. At night, in the hollow of sleep, his dreams no longer felt like dreams. He walked with the procession, lantern in hand, each step steady and familiar. He no longer watched from outside, he belonged within the endless march. And when he woke, sometimes the hum lingered so strongly he could still hear the shuffle of feet in the sand, the rustle of cloaks, the silence that bound them all together. One night, as the villagers gathered around the well, the traveler's vision blurred. The spiral carvings shimmered as if alive, spinning slowly before his eyes. The hum rose sharply, drowning out thought. He fell to his knees, clutching his lantern. The flame flared silver white, brighter than ever before. The villagers did not move to help him. They only raised their lanterns higher, as though acknowledging the transformation beginning within him. From the depths of the well, whispers rose. "You are listening, you are remembering, you are becoming." The words echoed in his skull, louder than any sound he had ever heard. Yet the air remained silent. He gasped for breath, heart racing, as shadows from the procession emerged around him, their lanterns glowing with uncanny light. One stepped forward, a tall figure, faceless, yet unbearably familiar. When it raised its lantern, the traveler's knees weakened. For the briefest instant, he thought he saw his own reflection within it, not the man he was, but the man he was becoming, hollow-eyed and silver-lit. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Am I one of you?" The figure did not answer. It only raised its lantern higher, its silver flame merging with his own. The hum surged, vibrating through every stone, every grain of sand. The traveler felt his body dissolve for a heartbeat, his skin no longer his own, his bones hollowed, his breath part of the silence itself, and then it ended. The lantern dimmed to its steady glow once more. The figures dissolved back into the shadows. The villagers lowered their flames. The traveler staggered to his feet, drenched in sweat, trembling. His chest still hummed, but quieter now. He looked down at his hands. They seemed the same, but faint dust of silver lingered along his fingertips, fading slowly into nothing. The old man with the staff appeared at his side. His expression was unreadable. "You see it now," he said quietly. "The desert has begun its claim." The traveler swallowed hard, unable to answer. The elder leaned closer, his voice like stone, grinding against stone. "You must decide, wanderer, to remain and carry the silence, or to flee, knowing it will follow you. There is no path untouched once the echoes have marked you." The words cut deep. The traveler understood now what it meant to be a listener. It was not simply to hear, but to become. He stared into the well one last time that night. Its spirals glowed faintly in the silver light, pulling at him like a tide he could not resist. And for the first time, he feared not the silence of the village, but the silence blooming inside him. The morning after his collapse dawned bright and merciless. Sunlight poured over the dunes in golden waves, but to the traveler it felt muted, filtered, as though he were seeing the world through a veil of silver haze. He sat outside his small dwelling, lantern resting at his side, its flame faint even in daylight. The villagers moved quietly around him, their robes brushing against the sand. They did not stare, nor did they ignore him. Instead, they moved as if he were part of the rhythm of the place, like the well, the spirals, the silence itself. But the traveler felt hollow. His body carried the memory of the night before, his reflection in the faceless figure's lantern, the silver dust on his fingertips, the surge of the hum that nearly pulled him into something more than human. And beneath it all, a question gnawed at him. How much of myself remains? That night, the villagers gathered not at the square or the hollow, but deeper into the desert. Lanterns swayed like a constellation being carried across the sand. The traveler followed, unsure if his feet moved by his own will or by the hum that drew him onward. They reached a vast dune field, where the sand shimmered pale under the moonlight. At the center of the clearing stood a circle of stones, tall and jagged, their surfaces carved with spirals so intricate they seemed to shift when stared at too long. The elder with the staff stood waiting at the center. His lantern burned brighter than the rest, its silver flame steady, unyielding. The villagers formed a wide circle around the stones. None spoke, none gestured. Only the steady silence, heavy and sacred. The elder's gaze fixed on the traveler. "Tonight," he said softly, his voice carrying easily despite the hush, "you will step within." The traveler's chest tightened. "Within what?" The old man lifted his staff, pointing to the circle of stones. "The silence of memory. Every listener must face it, if they are to remain among us. If you cannot bear the weight, you will not stay. The desert itself will decide." A chill coursed through the traveler, colder than any night wind. Lantern in hand, he stepped forward. The sand shifted under his feet, each step echoing with strange weight. The hum in his chest deepened until it resonated with the stones themselves. When he crossed the boundary of the circle, the air changed. It grew denser, heavier, as though time itself had thickened. The spirals carved into the stones glowed faintly, silver threads weaving between them like veins of light. He took another step and the world dissolved. He was no longer standing among dunes. Instead, he stood in a vast expanse of shifting visions. The ground beneath him was both sand and shadow, the sky above both stars and endless void. Lanterns flickered in the distance, swaying with unseen hands. And then the voices began, not whispers now, but full, resounding echoes. They rose and fell like a tide, countless and overlapping, a sea of memory that pressed against his mind. He staggered, clutching his lantern. "Stop, please." The voices did not stop. They poured into him, fragments of lives, not his own. He saw a child lost to a sandstorm, her tiny hand slipping away. He felt the thirst of a man who wandered for days before collapsing beneath the sun. He heard the final breath of a woman who had buried her family at the edge of the dunes. Each memory was sharp, searing, as if his own body lived them. His chest heaved, his knees buckled, and still they came, through the torrent. He heard a faint thread of voice, softer, familiar. He turned, gasping. There, among the shifting visions, stood his brother again, the boy's silver-lit eyes fixed on him, calm amid the storm. "Do not resist," the boy's voice said, though his lips never moved. "Listen, that is all. To carry is to belong." The traveler shook his head, tears streaming. "I cannot, there are too many you can," the boy whispered. "You already have." The traveler's lantern flickered violently, its flames swelling, shrinking, fighting against the tide. His chest burned with the hum, vibrating until it felt his ribs might shatter. But slowly, shakily, he stopped resisting. He let the voices flow. He let them pour through him, each memory like a wave that rose, broke, and fell away. Painful, yes, but not endless. Heavy, but bearable. The more he listened, the less they tore at him. Instead, they became part of him, woven threads in a tapestry he had never known he carried. When the visions finally dimmed, he found himself on his knees, breath ragged, tears streaking his face. His lantern glowed steady and bright, brighter than ever before, its silver flame unwavering. The circle of stones shimmered faintly, then still. The hum within him quieted, settling deep like a heartbeat he would never lose. He looked uphand. The elder stood before him, staff planted firmly in the sand. "You have endured," the old man said, his voice neither triumphant nor kind, only certain. "You are no longer a stranger. The silence has marked you. You are one of us now." The traveler bowed his head, too weak to speak, though in his chest the hum answered for him. The villagers lowered their lanterns in unison, a silent acknowledgement, a wordless welcome. That night, when the traveler finally lay down, sleep did not come as it once had. There was no resistance, no fear, only silence, steady, vast, and alive. And in that silence, he knew he had crossed a threshold. He was no longer the man who had entered the desert days ago. He had become something else, a listener, a vessel, a keeper of echoes. The days after the trial felt both familiar and alien. The traveler walked through the village square, his lantern swaying faintly at his side, its silver flame steady even in daylight. Children no longer ran from him, elders no longer looked through him. Instead, when their eyes met his, they lingered, full of unspoken understanding. He was one of them now, yet inside, he wrestled with unease. He remembered every vision the silence of memory had forced upon him. The thirsty man's cracked lips, the sandstorm's howl, his brother's glowing eyes. These images clung to him, living in his chest as surely as the hum. Every night, he closed his eyes only to feel them stir again. The desert's silence was not emptiness, it was a weight, and that weight was becoming his own. One afternoon, while the sun blazed white above the dunes, he found himself sitting by the well. Its carved spirals gleamed faintly in the light, never still, always shifting when his eyes lingered. The old woman approached, her silver hair glinting under her hood. She carried no lantern, as always, but the air around her seemed to shimmer with its own gravity. "You carry it now," she said softly, lowering herself beside him. The silence. "You feel it pressing?" "Yes." The traveler nodded, his voice hoarse. "It never leaves. Even when I try to rest, even when I walk, it is in my blood." Her eyes softened, though her face remained stern. "That is the way of it. You do not put it down once you take it. The echoes are not visitors, they are companions. They walk with you always." He swallowed hard. "And what happens when it becomes too heavy?" The woman looked toward the horizon, where dunes shimmered like molten gold. For a long time, she did not answer. Finally, she whispered, "Then you join them." The traveler's heart skipped. "Join them." She turned to him, her gaze sharp. "Every listener carries, until they can no longer carry, and then the silence takes them. Their flame goes out here." She gestured to his lantern, but it burns again beneath the dunes. His chest tightened. He remembered the glowing surface beneath the mound of stones, the faces drifting, like shadows underwater. His knees felt weak. "You mean," he struggled to form the words, "you mean I will become an echo to..." The woman nodded once, "As all of us will. That is the pact. To listen, to carry, and one day, to join." The words struck him like a storm. All this time, he had thought the villagers were simply guardians of memory, vessels holding what others had lost. He had not realized they themselves were destined to become part of it. A wave of dread washed over him. Was this his fate now, too? To dissolve into the silence, his face drifting beneath the sands for eternity. That night, the ritual felt heavier than before. The villagers gathered in the hollow, lanterns swaying, lips moving silently. The traveler lifted his flame with theirs, but his hands shook as the hum filled the air. He could not stop imagining his own face one day, appearing among the echoes, and then, as if answering his fear, the vision came. Through the glowing surface beneath the stones, he saw the procession once more. Lanterns swayed in perfect rhythm, shadows drifting across the dunes. But among them, one figure turned its faceless head toward him. He froze. It was him, his own reflection, marching with the echoes, his lantern burning silver bright. The hum deepened until it rattled his bones. His vision swam. You are already walking. The chorus filled his mind. Every step you take here, we take with you. Every silence you carry, we carry too. There is no difference between the living and the lost, only the flame and the silence it keeps. The traveler staggered, his lantern wavering. The villagers did not notice. Their eyes were closed, their lips shaping prayers. He whispered, trembling, "Is this my end?" The voices answered as one, "Not end, continuation." Thou reflection of himself turned back into the procession and vanished among the swaying lanterns. The glowing surface dimmed, the stones slid back into place, and the ritual ended. But the traveler remained standing, shaken to his core. Later, when the villagers returned to their homes, he lingered in the square. The silver flame of his lantern flickered gently, steady and alive. He stared at it for a long time, thinking of what the woman had said to carry, to listen, and one day to join. For the first time since entering the desert, he felt the weight of choice pressing on him. He could accept the pact fully, surrendering to it, letting the silence shape his fate. Or he could resist, leave the village, return to the world beyond the dunes, and hope the hum would fade. But deep in his chest, the hum pulsed stronger than ever, steady as his own heartbeat, and he wondered if there was truly any path left where the silence did not follow. The days stretched onward, timeless beneath the sun, timeless beneath the stars. For the traveler, time no longer moved in a way he understood. He felt suspended between moments, caught in the hush that clung to the village like a veil. But within, his thoughts were anything but still. He replayed the old woman's words again and again, to carry, to listen, and one day, to join. Each syllable gnawed at him like sand carried by wind, wearing him down grain by grain. At night, when he lay on his mat, the hum pulsed in his chest like a restless heartbeat. He tried to breathe it away, to silence the silence, but it always returned. He wondered if he could still live, if he could walk beyond the dunes, lantern extinguished, and reclaim his old life, or had the desert already claimed him beyond escape. One evening, unable to endure the wait, he wandered alone into the dunes. The villagers did not stop him. They only watched, lanterns glowing faintly at their sides, as if they had seen this before. He walked until the village lights were no more than distant sparks, until the silence pressed heavier than ever before. He collapsed onto the sand, lantern cradled in his hands, flame flickering steady and patient. "Tell me," he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking the hush, "do I still have a choice?" The lantern flared. The dunes around him shimmered, shifting like water. Slowly, the sands parted, revealing two paths stretching before him. On one path, he saw himself walking away, lantern dark, his feet dragging through the desert. His face was hollow, his body weakened, his eyes haunted. He reached a distant horizon, where green fields waited. But even there, shadows clung to him, whispers haunting his steps. The hum never left, twisting him into something broken and half-living. On the other path, he saw himself within the village, lantern bright. His posture was steady, his eyes calm, though silver light flickered faintly beneath his skin. He knelt at the circle of stones, surrounded by the villagers, until finally his lantern dimmed and dissolved into the sand. His face drifted beneath the dunes, serene, his silence eternal. Two futures, both heavy, both inevitable. The traveler's chest tightened. "There must be another way," he murmured, his voice trembling. "Something between, something more." But the desert did not answer. The sands hissed softly, shifting in the wind. The two visions faded, dissolving back into shadow. Only the hum remained, steady as his pulse, neither cruel nor kind. He fell to his knees, clutching his lantern, tears burning his eyes. "If I walk away, I lose myself. If I stay, I lose myself too. What choice is this?" The hum vibrated in his chest, stronger now, until it filled his ears like 1,000 heartbeats. For a moment, he thought he heard words forming within it, faint, distant, but clear enough to cut through the silence. You do not lose yourself, you become more than yourself. The voice struck him still. He looked down at his lantern, its silver flame dancing gently. It was small, fragile, and yet endless. He thought of the echoes he had seen: the child, the man, the woman, his brother. They had not been erased, they had not been forgotten. They had become part of something larger, woven into a silence that stretched beyond time. Perhaps it was not loss, perhaps it was transformation. But could he accept it when he returned to the village at dawn? The villagers greeted him not with words, but with lifted lanterns. They had known where he had gone, and what he had seen. The elder approached, his staff striking softly against the sand. "The desert has shown you," he said, voice steady. "You understand now." The traveler swallowed hard. "I saw both paths, to leave, to stay, both end in silence." The elder nodded slowly. "Yes, for there is no path in this world untouched by silence. To flee it is to carry it alone, to accept it is to carry it together. That is all." The traveler lowered his head, his heart heavy, yet strangely calm. For the first time, he understood that choice did not mean escape. It meant how he would bear what could not be avoided. And deep inside, he felt the hum, answer soft, steady, unyielding. That night, as he lifted his lantern with the others, the procession appeared once more. Lanterns swayed across the horizon, silver flames burning steady. The traveler raised his flame higher, and for a fleeting moment, he thought he saw both versions of himself, one walking alone into darkness, one marching with the echoes merge into one figure. The figure raised its lantern toward him, and, for the first time, the traveler raised his flame not in fear, but in answer. The traveler stood at the edge of the village square as night descended, lantern in hand. For the first time since his arrival, he did not tremble when he lit the silver flame. The fire rose, gentle but unwavering, and its glow brushed against his face like a familiar hand. The villagers gathered silently, lanterns held high. Their movements were patient, practiced, as though they had been waiting for this exact moment. Children pressed against their mothers' robes. Elders leaned on their staffs, yet all lifted their flames in unison, forming a circle of steady light. The elder stepped forward, staff striking the sand with a low, deliberate rhythm. "You have seen what lies before you," he said, his voice neither stern nor soft, only certain. "The desert gives no mercy, no illusions. To stay is to carry, and one day, to join. To leave is to carry alone. Have you chosen?" The traveler swallowed, eyes fixed on his lantern. The hum inside him vibrated faintly, urging him toward words he had resisted for too long. Finally, he lifted his head. "I will stay." The words echoed in silence, louder than a shout. The villagers did not cheer, nor did they move. They simply stood, lanterns lifted, until one by one, their flames dipped in acknowledgement. The elder nodded once. "Then you are bound, as we all are. You will listen, you will carry, and one day, when the silence calls, you will join us beneath the dunes. This is the pact." The traveler lowered his head in acceptance. The flame in his lantern flared, brighter than ever, and for a heartbeat it seemed to merge with the circle of light around him. That night, the ritual was different. Instead of gathering in the hollow, the villagers led him to the mound of stones where he had first glimpsed the echoes beneath the sand. The carvings shimmered faintly, glowing with silver light. He stood at the center, lantern in hand, while the villagers formed a wide circle around the mound. Their lanterns swayed slowly, in rhythm with the hum that rose from the earth itself. As the elder raised his staff, the hum deepened, vibrating through the ground, through the traveler's chest, until he felt hollow and full, all at once. The carvings on the stones began to move, spirals shifting into new patterns that glowed like constellations. The traveler knelt, pressing his lantern to the sand. Immediately, the light from the mound surged upward, enveloping him in a silver glow. The echoes rose again, faces drifting beneath the surface, lanterns swaying, their silence vast and eternal. But this time, he did not recoil. He leaned forward, listening. The voices came, countless and overlapping, but not as torment. They were steady now, like waves lapping against the shore. Each carried fragments of memory, pain, joy, loss, love. He felt them settle into him, not as wounds, but as threads, weaving into the tapestry already forming within his chest. One voice rose above the rest, his brother's. "You are ready now," it whispered, gentle as wind over dunes. "Do not fear what you will become. We are not gone. We are part of you, and you will be part of us." Tears filled his eyes, blurring the glow. He whispered back, voice breaking, "I am not afraid anymore." The silver glow softened, receding into the ground. The echoes dissolved into the stillness, their lanterns flickering once before vanishing. The carvings dimmed, spirals slowing until they were once again still stone. The traveler rose, lantern in hand. Its flame burned steady, a mirror of his heartbeat. The villagers lowered their lanterns. No words were spoken, none were needed. Later, as he lay on his mat, he stared at the ceiling of his small dwelling. The hum in his chest no longer felt like an intrusion. It felt like breath, like blood, like life itself. He thought of the visions the desert had shown him, the two futures, the paths of solitude and surrender. He understood now why there was no true difference. Silence would come for all things, in one form or another. The only choice was whether to carry it alone or together. And he had chosen together as sleep began to pull at him. He closed his eyes. He found himself walking in the procession once more, lantern swaying in his hand. But this time, there was no dread. The figures around him did not feel alien or faceless. They felt familiar, companions rather than ghosts. The desert stretched endless before them, but it was no longer empty. It was full of voices, of memory, of silence that was not absence, but presence. The traveler lifted his lantern higher, silver, flame flickering bright against the night, and somewhere deep within, he knew that though one day he would join the echoes beneath the dunes, for now, he was exactly where he was meant to be. A listener, a keeper. One. Among the silence, the desert is never still, though it appears empty. Its silence carries weight, like a book with pages too heavy to lift. Now, as the traveler walked beyond the village, lantern glowing faintly in daylight, he felt that weight more clearly than ever. Every dune shimmered differently. Every gust of wind carried faint whispers, softer than the edge of hearing. The hum in his chest no longer resisted these sounds, it resonated with them, recognizing their rhythm as though it had always been part of him. For the first time, the desert did not feel hostile. It felt watchful. One morning, the elders summoned him to the well. "You are ready," the old man said, his staff planted firmly in the sand. "The pact you carry is not only to listen, it is also to remember what was hidden before you." The traveler frowned. Hidden, the elder gestured toward the horizon, where the dunes rippled like a frozen sea. Beneath the sands lie chambers older than the village, older than silence itself. Few are called to see them. Fewer still return. Unchanged, the traveler's lantern flickered at his side, its flame trembling faintly. His chest tightened. "And I am to enter them." The elder's eyes gleamed with silver reflection. "The silence chose you. Now, it will test you." That evening, the villagers gathered not in the square but at the edge of the dunes, where the sands rose into a towering crest. Lanterns dotted the slope like stars, swaying gently in the twilight. The traveler climbed with them, each step sinking deep into the soft sand. At the summit, he paused, breath catching that below lay a hollow. Unlike the others he had seen, its center was ringed by massive stones, their carvings glowing faintly in spirals. But this time, the sand within the circle shifted as though alive. Waves rippled across its surface, rising and falling like a restless tide. The elder lifted his staff, the villagers raised their lanterns in unison. The traveler's hum deepened until it thrummed in his ears. His flame surged, silver light spilling out across the sand. The surface of the hollow convulsed and then, slowly, parted. A dark opening yawned wide, stairways descending into shadow. The air that rose from below was cool, carrying a faint metallic tang, as though the desert itself had been holding its breath for centuries. The traveler stepped forward, lantern high, and descended. Each step echoed softly, though there was no sound. The hum within him guided his pace, steady and unbroken. The deeper he went, the more the walls around him revealed themselves, not sand, carved with spirals that stretched endlessly, weaving into each other until the eye could no longer tell where one ended and another began. At last, he reached the chamber. It was vast. The ceiling arched so high it vanished into shadow. Pillars rose from the floor, each carved with spirals that shimmered faintly in his lantern's light. At the center of the chamber lay a pool, its surface smooth as glass, glowing faintly silver. but it was what lay beneath the pool that froze him. Countless figures drifted there, not shadows this time, but clear as faces pressed against glass. Their features were sharp, their eyes open, their lips unmoving. Each held a lantern close to their chest, flames flickering faintly, as though alive despite the water. That the traveler staggered forward. His flame trembled violently. These are the elder's voice echoed softly behind him, though the man had not followed. The chamber itself seemed to speak in his tones. They are the first listeners, the ones who heard before the village, before the silence had a name. They rest here, not beneath the dunes, but in the chamber of memory. Their flames never die. They are the roots of all echoes. The traveler fell to his knees at the pool's edge. One face caught his eye more than the rest. A woman, her features calm, serene, but her lantern blazing brighter than those around her. For a moment, her eyes shifted, meeting his directly. His breath caught. The hum surged within him, vibrating until his ribs ached. The woman's voice whispered, soft and clear, though her lips never moved, "We are waiting." Each listener joins, not to vanish, but to preserve. You will carry us forward. And when your flame sinks, another will carry you. His chest ached with the weight of it. He pressed his lantern close, tears streaking his face. But how does one bear so much? How do you carry the voices, the silence, forever? The woman's flame flickered gently, by not carrying alone, by listening together. That is the pact. The chamber shimmered, the pool rippling faintly. For a moment, the traveler thought he might dissolve into it then and there, his flame merging with those below. But the hum steadied, pulling him back. He stumbled to his feet, lantern clutched tightly. The silver pool dimmed, the faces fading into shadow, until only the faint glow of spirals remained. When he emerged from the hollow, the villagers were waiting, their lanterns swaying softly. They looked at him not with surprise but with quiet knowing. The elder approached, tapping his staff against the sand. "You have seen what lies beneath. Now you understand. The silence is not emptiness, is memory. It is endless, and you are part of it now." The traveler lowered his head. His lantern glowed steady and calm, and in his chest, the hum no longer felt like burden. It felt like belonging. That night, as he lay to rest, the dreams came again. But they were different. He did not see himself walking alone, nor drifting as an echo. Instead, he stood in the chamber once more, surrounded by countless lanterns, each flame blending with his own. It was not silence at all. It was a quiet. And for the first time, he slept without fear. The next evening, unable to silence the pull within his chest, the traveler returned to the hollow alone. The villagers did not question him. They only watched with unreadable eyes, as though they had known he would return. His lantern glowed faintly as he descended. The winding stair into the chamber once more. The air was cool and still, as if it had not been touched in centuries. Yet this time, he noticed something new. The hum inside him responded to the carvings on the walls. Each spiral glowed faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. He raised his lantern closer, and the spirals brightened, shifting as though alive. When he reached the chamber's heart, the silver pool shimmered, waiting. He knelt at its edge, holding his lantern above the still surface. The pool rippled. One flame beneath the water flared, brighter than the rest. Slowly, a figure's face came into focus, a man with sharp features, eyes filled with determination. His lantern blazed silver, the hum deepened within the traveler's chest, and suddenly, the figure's voice filled his mind. "I was once as you are. I crossed the dunes in search of answers. I thought silence was emptiness. I thought caring, it would destroy me. But I learned, the silence is not an end. It is a passage." The traveler leaned closer, captivated. The man's image flickered, replaced by another elder woman, with weathered skin and kind eyes. Her lantern pulsed gently, her voice soft as the desert wind. "I was a keeper of stories. When the silence found me, I feared losing my words. But here, I learned, nothing is lost. Every story becomes part of the whole. Every word hums in eternity." The traveler's breath caught. The pool rippled again, revealing more faces, one after another, their flames flickering brighter with each shift. Each spoke in turn, not in sound, but directly into his chest, carried by the hum. Some voices were sorrowful. "I carried grief so heavy, I thought it would bury me. But the silence did not erase it. It held it for me, until I could rest." Others were joyful. "I carried laughter, and it lives here still. Listen closely, and you will hear it between the echoes, and still others were resolute. The desert does not ask for perfection, it only asks that you walk. Every step, every burden, becomes part of the silence. The chamber pulsed with their words, until the traveler felt himself overwhelmed. His lantern shook in his hands, flame bending wildly. "I cannot carry all of you," he whispered, tears streaking his cheeks. "It is too much. Too many voices, too much weight." The hum within him steadied, surrounding his breaking voice. And then, the woman's voice returned. "You are not meant to carry alone. That is why there are many listeners. Each bears a fragment. Together, the silence endures." The pool stilled, the faces dissolved into silver glow. Leaving the chamber quiet once more, the traveler sat trembling, his lantern steadying in his grip. Slowly, his breathing eased. He understood now. He was not a vessel meant to hoard infinite memories. He was a thread in a tapestry, carrying only what he must, while others carried the rest. For the first time, the silence felt lighter. As he rose to leave, his flame brushed against the spirals carved into the pillars. They pulsed brighter, illuminating new patterns, constellations, stars swirling across the stone. He traced them with his fingers, recognizing shapes he had glimpsed in dreams. A lantern, a spiral, a procession stretching across the sky. Hum swelled until it seemed to fill the entire chamber. And in the faintest whisper, he heard, above as below, the echoes are not bound to the dunes. They stretch across the heavens. What you carry here, the stars carry too. The traveler staggered back, his chest alight with awe. His flame flared so brightly that the chamber glowed as though lit by moonlight. When at last it dimmed, he turned and ascended the stair, his heart calmer than it had ever been. The villagers waited at the surface, their lanterns swaying softly. The elder approached, eyes gleaming with silver reflection. "You have listened," he said, voice low and steady. "Now you understand why we are bound. The silence is not emptiness. It is inheritance." The traveler nodded, voice hoarse, but certain. "I understand. To carry is not to bear alone. It is to join." The elder's expression softened. For the first time, a faint smile curved his lips. "Then you have taken your true step as a listener." That night, as the ritual began, the traveler lifted his lantern with the others. The hum rose, steady and resonant, but this time, he did not fear its weight. He felt the voices of the chamber within, if the determined man, the kind woman, the countless others who had carried before him. He was no longer walking alone, he was walking with all of them, and as his flame joined the circle of light, it did not flicker. It shone steady, as though it had always belonged there. The desert rarely offered rest. Even as the traveler began to understand the pact, the silence tested him still. For 3 nights, he dreamed of the chamber, not calm visions, but storms of memory. Flames flickered in every direction, faces crowding the edges of his sleep, voices rising in 1,000 overlapping whispers. He would wake with his chest pounding, lantern trembling beside his mat, its flame wild and restless. By the 4th night, he knew the chamber was calling him back. He descended again, alone, lantern glowing faintly in the darkness. The spirals on the walls pulsed brighter than before, alive with energy, as though waiting for him. When he reached the pool, it shimmered violently. The calm reflections of faces were gone. Instead, the surface boiled with light, countless flames rising and collapsing, voices echoing in fragments. The hum within his chest surged, louder, harsher. He staggered, clutching his ribs, and then the voices struck. They poured into him all at once, sorrowful cries, joyful laughter, regret, love, longing, despair, 1,000 stories layered atop one another, filling his skull until he thought it might shatter. He fell to his knees, clutching his lantern. Its flame blazed wildly, silver sparks scattering across the chamber floor. "Too much," he gasped, his voice lost in the torrent. I cannot bear it." The spirals on the pillars flared, casting the chamber in blinding light. The pool rippled higher, flames leaping like restless waves. The voices shouted within him, drowning one another out. His body trembled, sweat soaking his skin. Through the chaos, one voice rose clearer than the rest. It was not loud, but steady, cutting through the storm like a thread of silver. "You are not meant to hold them all. Let them pass through you. Let them flow, as the desert wind flows. You are a vessel, not a prison." The traveler gasped for air, clutching at the words. He forced himself to breathe, to listen not to each voice individually, but to the rhythm beneath them, the hum, the endless pulse of silence itself. Slowly, he realized, the voices were not demanding that he carry them all. They were flowing, like water, seeking a channel. His flame was not meant to trap them, but to guide them. He lifted his lantern. Its flame bent, silver threads streaming outward into the pool. The voices softened, weaving into the spiral light instead of tearing at him. The chamber quieted, the pool stilled, glowing with a steady silver shimmer. The voices faded to whispers, then to silence. The traveler collapsed, breathing hard, his lantern dimming to a calm, steady glow. His body shook with exhaustion, but his chest no longer felt torn apart. Instead, it pulsed gently, in harmony with the chamber's light. He understood now. To be a listener was not to contain, it was to let flow. As he knelt at the pool's edge, one last face appeared beneath the surface. A child, no more than 8 or 9, holding a lantern, nearly too large for small hands. The child's expression was serene, eyes luminous, flame steady. The hum in the traveler's chest deepened, and the child's voice filled him. Do not fear the silence. It is never yours alone. Every listener becomes part of the current. When you are weary, another will take your place. When you falter, another will carry the flame. The traveler bowed his head, tears streaking his face. I understand. At last, I understand. The child's flame flared, then dissolved into the pool, leaving only ripples of silver light. When the traveler returned to the surface, dawn was breaking over the dunes. The villagers were waiting again, their lanterns swaying softly. They studied his face, and though none spoke, they seemed to recognize the shift within him. The elder approached, staff striking the sand. The chamber tried you, he said, voice low, and yet you return whole. What did you learn? The traveler raised his lantern, flame steady and bright, that to listen is not to bear alone. It is to let the silence flow through me, not consume me. The elder nodded, eyes gleaming faintly. Then you have taken another step toward what lies ahead. That night, as the villagers gathered for their ritual, the traveler joined them with new steadiness. The hum rose around him, but instead of pressing against his chest, it flowed through him like wind through open dunes. For the first time, he did not fear being broken by it. He was not a vessel, cracking under weight. He was a channel through which the silence passed, joining flame to flame, voice to voice, until nothing was alone. The night after his trial, the village gathered in the hollow as always, yet something felt different. The air was calmer, the lantern flamed steadier, as though they too sensed the shift in him. The traveler stood among them, his lantern glowing bright and unshaken. When the hum rose, he felt it flow through him like a tide, not battering but carrying. For the first time, he swayed naturally with the others, his flame weaving into their rhythm without resistance. The elder's eyes lingered on him, measuring, but at last the old man inclined his head. No words were spoken, but the gesture carried weight. The traveler was no longer testing the silence. He was part of it. As the ritual deepened, the desert itself seemed to respond. The dunes shivered faintly under the moonlight, their ridges glowing silver. Wind swept across the hollow, carrying not grit but a soft, melodic whisper, like distant chanting. The traveler's lantern flared, and suddenly, his vision expanded. The hollow dissolved. He was standing at the center of a vast expanse of dunes, stretching endlessly in every direction. Lanterns floated above the sand's thousands, tens of thousands, drifting like stars torn from the heavens. Each flame hummed faintly, weaving together into one boundless harmony. Among them, figures walked, not only the villagers, but countless listeners across ages. Some bore robes of styles long forgotten, others carried staffs or ornaments he did not recognize, yet all swayed in the same rhythm, flames steady, eyes calm. The traveler clutched his lantern tighter, his own flame pulsed in time with theirs, as though it had always belonged here. Then, above, he noticed something stranger still. The stars themselves shimmered, spiraling into patterns that mirrored the spirals carved on the chamber walls. They spun slowly, deliberately, as if responding to the lanterns below. The boundary between sky and desert blurred until he could not tell whether the flames were stars or stars were flames. A voice rose from the horizon, not one, but many, blending into a single resonance. The silence is not of the dunes alone. It flows through the heavens, through time, through every listener who has ever carried the flame. You are part of a current without end. The traveler's chest ached, not with fear, but with reverence. Tears blurred his eyes as he whispered, "Then, even when I fade, I will not vanish." The voice hummed, soft but unshakable, "Nothing vanishes. All joins, even silence speaks." The vision dimmed slowly, lanterns dissolving into the silver glow of moonlit sand. The traveler blinked, and he was back in the hollow, surrounded by villagers whose flames still swayed. His lantern pulsed once, bright and strong, before calming to its steady glow. The elder met his eyes across the circle. For the first time, the old man's face softened fully, and he bowed his head not in command, but in recognition. When the ritual ended, the traveler returned to his dwelling. He lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling beams as the hum within him thrummed softly. His flame rested beside him, steady and calm. He thought of the chamber, of the torrent of voices, of the vision of lanterns and stars. He thought of the truth he had resisted at first, that silence was not emptiness, nor burden, but joining. At last, sleep claimed him. In his dream, he walked the procession again. Yet this time, he did not trail behind, hesitant and uncertain. He walked at the center, his lantern high, flame steady. Around him, countless figures swayed in rhythm, their flames blending into a single river of silver light. He felt no fear, no weight pressing down. He felt belonging, vast and endless. The desert stretched before him, infinite and silent, but it was no longer a silence of absence. It was a silence full of voices, all moving together, and at its heart, his flame burned steady. When dawn touched the village, he rose with renewed calm. He stepped outside, the dunes gleaming gold in early light. Children chased each other between the huts, their laughter carrying on the wind. Elders prepared their lanterns for the evening, their movements unhurried. The traveler lifted his own lantern, gazing at its flame. For the first time, he felt not like an outsider, not like a burdened wanderer. He felt like one among many, bound to something eternal. The silence was no longer something he feared. It was something he welcomed. The desert does not rest, even when its travelers find peace. Though the hum in his chest had softened to a steady rhythm, the traveler soon discovered that the silence carried not only memory but direction. On the fourth night after his vision, he awoke before dawn, his lantern glowing faintly without touch. Its silver flame stretched toward the window, as though pointing him outward. The pull was gentle but insistent. He rose quietly, slipping from his dwelling into the pale pre-dawn air. The village slept around him, lanterns dim and still, yet he sensed he was not breaking order. He was following it. The dunes shimmered faintly in starlight, their slopes curving like waves frozen in motion. The traveler's feet sank into cool sand, each step guided not by sight but by the hum that thrummed deeper with every movement. At first, he thought he was wandering aimlessly, but as the moon dipped lower, the sand ahead of him began to glow, finite lines etching themselves into the surface, spirals unfurling like veins of silver light. They stretched in a winding path, leading deeper into the desert. His lantern pulsed, in response. This was no ordinary trail. It was hidden until silence had chosen him. He followed. The air grew cooler, sharper, as though the desert itself was holding its breath. The spirals beneath his feet brightened with each step, fading behind him as he passed, so that the path existed only in the space between steps, never behind, never ahead, always in the moment. It reminded him of the voices in the chamber, overwhelming when clutched, but flowing when released. This path too was not meant to be held, only walked. After what felt like hours, the dunes parted, revealing a hollow unlike any he had seen before. It was vast and perfectly circular, its walls smooth as though shaped by hands older than time. At its center rose a single obelisk, half buried, its surface carved with spirals more intricate than any he had seen in the village or the chamber. The moonlight caught its edges, making it gleam with silver fire. The traveler descended slowly, lantern lifted. As he neared the obelisk, the hum in his chest deepened until it matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. He placed a hand on the stone. The spirals flared instantly. Silver light cascaded outward, flooding the hollow. The sand rippled like water, forming patterns that shifted and twisted until they became images. He saw the village not as it was, but as it had been centuries ago, smaller, fragile, its people fewer. He saw figures carrying lanterns across the dunes, their flames flickering yet unbroken. He saw the chamber, newly carved, spirals still fresh and gleaming. The images shifted again, showing listeners long gone, their flames merging, their voices joining the hum. He recognized faces he had glimpsed in the pool now walking, alive, part of the procession. The obelisk was not a marker, it was a memory carved into stone, a record dot. But then, the images grew stranger. He saw formless, pressing at the edges of the dunes. They moved like storms, faceless and immense, their presence bending the sands. Some flames faltered before them, some were extinguished. The traveler's heart seized. He clutched his lantern tighter, flame trembling. The shadows pressed closer, yet each time, the spirals flared, and the listeners held their lanterns higher. The shadows recoiled, dissolving into the sand. The silence had been tested before. It would be tested again. The vision faded. The spirals dimmed to their steady glow. The traveler fell to his knees before the obelisk, chest heaving. His lantern pulsed weakly, then steadied that. Now he understood why he had been called here. The silence was not simply about memory, or joining it was also about defense, about holding light steady when darkness pressed in. And though he had only just begun, he was now part of that eternal duty. The first glow of dawn touched the horizon as he returned to the village. The spirals in the sand vanished with the stars, leaving only ordinary dunes behind. Yet the hum in his chest carried the memory as clearly as if it had been etched into him. The villagers met him in silence as he approached. Though no words were spoken, he knew they understood where he had been. Their eyes reflected the same silver glow he had seen at the obelisk. The elder stepped forward, placing a hand over his heart. "You have seen the path," the old man said quietly. "Then you know what lies beyond. You know the silence is not only memory, it is guardianship." The traveler lowered his lantern, flame steady and calm. "I know, and I will walk it." That night, as the ritual began, his flame pulsed stronger than ever. He no longer swayed uncertainly. He stood firm, his lantern rising high among the others, its silver light joining the circle with clarity. The desert wind stirred, carrying a low hum that seemed to stretch beyond the dunes, beyond the village, into eternity. And at its heart, the traveler stood not broken, not burdened, but bound. The desert does not reveal all at once. Even after the obelisk, the traveler sensed there was more hidden in the silence, something unspoken, something that waited behind the harmony. That night, as the ritual began, the flames swayed in their endless rhythm. But when his lantern pulsed, he felt a strange dissonance, a faint crackle beneath the hum, a shadow in the light. His breath caught. He knew this sounded was the same whisper he had seen in the obelisk's vision. The others did not falter. Their swaying remained steady. But to him, the hum fractured. The shadows were calling. He left the circle quietly, lantern trembling in his hand. The desert beyond the hollow seemed darker than usual, dunes sharp under a moonless sky. Each step carried him further from the village's glow, until only his own flame lit the sand. And then, they came. The shadows rose at the horizon, taller than dunes, shapeless and vast. They did not roar or howl, yet their presence pressed against him, like a heavy tide. His lantern flickered, shrinking against the weight of their silence. "Why do you come?" he whispered, voice unsteady. The hum in his chest wavered. Then faintly he heard them. Forgotten, forsaken, unheard. The words seeped into his bones, layered and fractured, as if 1,000 voices were trying to speak but none found completion. His throat tightened. "You are the ones who faltered, the flames that died." The shadows pulsed, shifting closer. The air grew cold, biting, carried too much, left behind, silence devoured. He stumbled back, lantern shaking wildly. The fear clawed at him. This was what the villagers had guarded against, what the obelisk had shown. Silence could break, it could abandon. But then, deep in his chest, the hum steadied, soft and insistent. He realized these were not enemies. They were fragments, leftover echoes of those who had not learned to flow. They were silence that had turned inward, lost without joining. Slowly, he lowered his lantern. His flame flickered, then steadied. "You are not forsaken," he whispered, voice stronger now. "You are not forgotten." The shadows writhed, shapes twisting violently. His flame bent under their pressure, nearly dying, yet he held it steady, refusing to recoil. "You belong to," he said, louder, firmer. "The silence is not only for the steady, it is for all who walked, even those who broke." For a moment, nothing changed. The shadows loomed taller, pressing harder, their fractured whispers filling his skull. His flame bent low, nearly snuffed, and then slowly it straightened. The shadows faltered, their forms wavered, edges breaking apart like smoke caught in a rising wind. The fractured whispers softened, becoming clearer, as if voices long trapped had finally found breath. One voice rose distinct among them, a trembling echo. "We feared we were alone." The traveler bowed his head, tears in his eyes. "You are not, none of us are alone." His lantern flared brilliantly, silver threads shooting outward. They wove through the shadows, pulling them into the hum. Slowly, the darkness thinned, dissolving into faint sparks of light that sank into the sand. The weight lifted, the silence deepened, but this time, it felt whole. When he returned to the village, dawn was breaking. The elder stood waiting, as though he had known. His eyes narrowed, studying the weariness in the traveler's stance. "You have met them," the elder said quietly. The traveler nodded, lifting his lantern. Its flame burned steady, but faint silver motes swirled around it, remnants of what had joined. "They are not enemies," he whispered. "They are fragments. They only wanted to be heard." The elder's expression softened, the faintest sadness shadowing his gaze. Few listeners ever faced them directly. Fewer still return whole. "You have seen what most deny, that silence is not perfect harmony. It carries fracture too. To join is to heal." That night, when the ritual began again, the traveler's flame shone differently. Not brighter, not stronger, but deeper woven with threads of the shadows he had carried back. When the hum rose, it did not falter. It resonated more richly, as though the silence itself had widened. The villagers swayed, the elder closed his eyes, and the traveler stood firm, lantern high, his flame a bridge between light and dark, harmony and fracture. The desert did not only test him now, it trusted him. The desert had quieted after his encounter with the shadows, yet within the village, whispers stirred. When the traveler returned from the dunes, his lantern's flame burned steady, but a faint silver haze curled around it like smoke. The villagers noticed. They did not speak, but their eyes followed him with unease, as though sensing something foreign in the glow. That night, during the ritual, the circle formed, as always. The hum rose, deep and steady, the lanterns swaying in their timeless rhythm. Yet, when his lantern joined, the harmony shifted, not broken, richer layered, carrying a resonance unlike before. Some villagers faltered in their steps, their flames trembling. The elder lifted his staff sharply, steadying the rhythm, and the ritual continued. But afterward, when the lanterns dimmed, the silence that lingered was heavy. The elder came to him privately, staff tapping softly against the sand. His weathered eyes searched the traveler's face. "You have brought something back," he said, voice low, not accusing but curious. The traveler lowered his gaze to his lantern. The silver haze curled upward, faint sparks flickering within, whispers echoing at the edges of the flame. "They were not enemies," he said quietly. "The shadows, they were fragments, lost voices, forgotten, but still yearning to belong. I could not turn them away. They asked to be heard, so I listened, and I carried them." The elder's face softened with a mix of sorrow and awe. He lowered himself slowly to sit on the sand, leaning against his staff. "Few have dared, fewer still survived the weight. Yet here you stand, flame unbroken." The traveler hesitated. "Do you fear what I carry?" The elder closed his eyes. "Fear, yes. Foreshadows unsettle even the oldest among us. But I do not fear you. The silence chooses its vessels wisely. If it trusted you to walk that path, then we must trust too." The words steadied the traveler's chest. He knelt beside the elder, his lantern set between them, its silver glow flickering across their faces. "I did not understand at first," the traveler murmured. "I thought silence was only harmony, only peace. But now, I sit as more. It holds fractured too, and heals it. Shadows are not to be cast out. They are to be brought back." The elder nodded slowly. "Then you have glimpsed the truest form of our burden. We are not only listeners, we are mayors." When the next ritual began, the elder summoned the circle wider than before. Every villager gathered, lanterns glowing, children clutching small flames, elders steady with their staffs. The traveler stood at the center, the elder raised his staff high. "Tonight, we witness a flame that has walked among shadows. Tonight, silence reveals to us its other face. Do not fear it. See it, learn it." The villagers' eyes turned to the traveler. For a breath, unease lingered. their lanterns trembling faintly, but when his flame pulsed steady, layered with whispers, it did not clash. It joined. The hum deepened, fuller than ever, carrying threads of sorrow and strength, fracture and wholeness. The villagers swayed. The unease softened. Their flames steadied, and for the first time, silence did not merely bind them, it expanded. Afterward, when the ritual ended, children approached the traveler curiously. They stared at the silver haze, reaching tiny fingers toward the flickering sparks. "Does it hurt?" one asked softly. But traveler smiled, kneeling so his lantern was at their height. "No," it whispers, "but it does not hurt. It reminds me that even when something breaks, it can still belong." The children's eyes widened. They swayed gently, mimicking the rhythm of the ritual, their small flames flickering in response. For them, shadows were no longer a terror. They were part of the silence. That night, as the traveler lay beneath the beams of his dwelling, he stared at his lantern beside him. The haze swirled faintly, carrying whispers at the edges of hearing. Some were sorrowful, some were soft, all belonged. He thought of the chamber, the obelisk, the dunes, the elders' words. "We are not only listeners, we are menders." His chest pulsed with the hum, steady and calm. Perhaps this was why he had been drawn to the village, not merely to listen, not merely to join, but to carry the forgotten back into silence, so that even Fractor found home. Dawn came quietly. The desert stretched golden beneath the rising sun, endless and patient. The traveler stepped outside, lantern at his side, flame steady. Children played in the sand. Elders prepared for another day. Life continued, simple and unshaken. Yet he knew, as he watched the horizon, that the silence had shifted. Not broken, not burdened, expanded. And he, once a stranger, was now part of its weaving. On the seventh night after the traveler's return from the dunes, the elders summoned the village to the hollow. The lanterns formed not the usual circle, but a spiral, wide and unbroken, echoing the markings carved in the chamber and etched into the obelisk. The villagers swayed with anticipation, their flames glowing steady yet curious. At the spiral's center stood the traveler. His lantern pulsed softly, its haze shimmering in silver threads. For the first time, he did not feel like a guest. He felt like part of the spiral itself, woven into its endless turn. The elder lifted his staff. His voice, low yet clear, rolled across the gathering. "Long have we carried the silence. Long have we guarded it against breaking. But silence is not only what holds, it is also what heals. Tonight, we mark the flame that has carried fracture back into the whole. Tonight, the silence deepens. The villagers' flames bent inward, their light pooling toward the center. That the traveler's chest ached with a weight he could not name. He bowed his head, lifting his lantern high. The hum rose, deeper than he had ever heard. Not only the villagers' voices, not only the dunes, but something greater, threads, reaching back into the chamber, to the obelisk, to every listener who had ever joined the silence. It was no longer just a hum, it was a chorus, and within it, he felt the whispers of the shadows he had carried. They no longer fractured, they no longer pressed, they joined, their tones soft but clear, weaving seamlessly into the resonance. The circle swayed, the spiral flowing, the desert seemed to breathe. As the ritual deepened, the sand beneath their feet trembled faintly, not with violence but with recognition. The dunes at the horizon shimmered with faint spirals of light, stretching outward like veins. The silence extended beyond the village, beyond the hollow, threading through the endless desert. The elder lowered his staff, eyes fixed on the traveler. "You are no longer merely a flame bearer, you are a binder. Where silence cracks, you will carry it whole." The words struck deep. The traveler bowed his head, overwhelmed, yet steady. "I will carry it," he whispered. The elder nodded, his weathered gaze soft. "Then you are bound not only to us, but to the desert itself." The ritual closed with calm. Lanterns dimmed, voices softened, and one by one, the villagers drifted to their dwellings. Yet none looked at him with unease now. Their eyes carried reverence, even gratitude. Children smiled shyly as they passed. Elders bowed faintly. When the hollow emptied, only the elder remained. He approached, placing a hand on the traveler's shoulder. "You will learn," he said quietly, "that silence carries endless faces. Some are gentle, some are harsh. You have met both. More will come." The traveler's lantern pulsed, its haze curling gently. "And if I falter?" The elder's gaze did not waver. Then the silence will mend you as you have mended it. None walk it alone. The words settled deep, heavier than comfort, yet steady as stone. That night, the traveler walked alone to the edge of the dunes. The moon rose high, spilling silver light across the sand. He held his lantern out before him, watching its flame reflect in the grains. The desert stretched silent, endless, yet for the first time, it did not feel vast and empty. It felt alive, threaded with countless voices, countless flames, countless silences layered into one. He lifted his lantern higher, letting its glow spill into the night. The hum rose faintly in his chest, joined by whispers both old and new, and the desert listened. In the stillness, he whispered into the open air, "I am here, I am listening, I am carrying." The wind stirred, gentle, cool, brushing across the dunes like an answer. His lantern pulsed once, then steadied. The silence deepened, and the traveler knew this was not the end of his path. It was the beginning of a longer journey, one that stretched beyond dunes, beyond horizons, into the very heart of the desert's eternal night. That night, he slept soundly for the first time since entering the village, not because the silence pressed less, but because it no longer pressed at all. It cradled him, and when dawn broke, painting the sands in gold, he rose knowing that wherever he walked, he carried not just a flame, but an entire silence that would never fade. The desert had accepted him, yet its silence had not stilled. It shifted, whispered, beckoned. For many nights after the spiral ritual, the traveler's dreams carried him beyond the hollow, beyond the dunes, toward a horizon he had not yet touched. Each dream began the same. He walked under a silver moon, his lantern in hand, and the sand beneath his feet glowed faintly, etching a line forward like a path. Yet every time, before he could follow it far, he awoke. He did not speak of these dreams, but the hum in his chest told him they were not illusions, they were invitations. One dawn, he rose before the others stirred. The village was quiet, lanterns dim, the spiral chamber asleep. He carried his flame to the edge of the dunes, where the desert stretched unbroken. For a long moment, he stood still, waiting. The wind whispered through the sand. The horizon shimmered with heat. And then, as the sun tipped upward, his lantern pulsed once, twice, steady. The sand before him glowed, faintly, thin lines unfurling like veins. They wove into a road, straight and narrow, stretching into the desert. He inhaled slowly, the hum resonating deep in his chest. This was the road from his dreams. The traveler stepped forward with each footfall. The glowing line brightened, then faded behind him, as if the path existed only for the moment it was walked. The desert around him grew quieter, the wind stilled, the dunes heavy with silence. It was not hostile, it was expectant. The road curved gently, then dipped between two towering ridges of sand. Shadows pooled in the hollow, cool and sharp. The silence thickened until it pressed at his ears like the moment before a drumbeat. And then, as he emerged from the hollow, he saw them. Ruins. Half buried in the sand lay the broken remnants of stone arches, their surfaces carved with spirals like those in the chamber, and on the obelisk, collapsed walls jutted from the dunes, their edges worn smooth by centuries of wind. Faint pillars leaned at odd angles, their tops snapped clean. The traveler halted, breath shallow. This was no ordinary ruin. The carvings were too familiar, the shapes too precise. This had been a village. Another village, like the one he had found but lost to the sand. He walked slowly among the ruins, his lantern's glow catching faint etchings in the stone. Some spirals were whole, others fractured, incomplete, like voices cut off mid-word. His chest hummed faintly in recognition. He lifted his lantern toward a fallen archway, and the haze curled upward. Whispers flickered faintly at the edges of hearing, not loud, not clear, but present. He lowered his head. These were fragments, too, forgotten listeners. His flame pulsed, steady but somber. Once, you were carried, he whispered, and still, you are carried. You are not lost. The whispers softened, like wind easing against stone. At the ruins' heart stood a broken platform, its surface carved with an immense spiral that spread outward in fading lines. At its center was a hollow depression, perfectly circular. The traveler knelt before it. He set his lantern in the hollow. Its silver flame flared instantly, filling the cracks in the stone with light. The spiral came alive. The ruins glowed faintly, their carvings shining with silver threads. The sand trembled, releasing faint echoes, whispers upon whispers, too many to separate. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. He saw visions, a village alive, lanterns swaying, children laughing, flames weaving into ritual, a people listening, binding, guarding, and then storms, endless storms, sand swallowing the arches, lanterns extinguished, silence cracking, the vision fractured, darkness pressed, whispers broke into shards. The traveler's chest tightened, but his flame pulsed steady, carrying threads of the shadows he had once absorbed. Slowly, the vision steadied, the darkness eased, the ruins quieted. When the glow faded, his lantern burned, steady in the hollow. He lifted it, and the spiral on the platform dimmed to silence. He stood in the ruins for a long time, gazing at the broken arches, the buried walls. A village once whole, now reduced to fragments. Yet even in ruin, its silence remained. The desert had led him here not to mourn, but to remember, to bind. He bowed his head. "I will carry you." When he returned to his village that night, the elder studied him closely. The traveler's flame burned as always, but faint silver motes swirled deeper within it. His chest hummed with new resonance. "You walked the road," the elder said softly. The traveler nodded. "And I found another village, buried, but not forgotten." The elder's eyes darkened, sorrow heavy in their depths. "You saw what we do not speak of. That silence does not always hold. Some spirals end, some flames falter." The traveler lifted his lantern, its haze curling. "They are not gone. Their fragments remain. I heard them, I carried them." The elder closed his eyes, bowing his head. Then the silence grows deeper still. That night, during the ritual, when his flame joined the circle, the hum was not as before. It was wider, layered, carrying not only the voices of his village but whispers from the ruins as well. The villagers swayed uneasily at first, but then their flames steadied, their steps flowed, and the silence deepened. The desert listened, and the traveler knew the forgotten road would not end at ruins. It would lead him further, deeper, into silence's hidden face. The ruins did not end with what the desert revealed on the surface. When the traveler returned the next day, drawn by a tug in his chest he could not ignore, he searched the broken arches more closely. The sand shifted strangely around the platform, where his lantern had once flared. Beneath the carvings of the great spiral, faint cracks spread outward, like veins waiting to be traced. He set his lantern down again. Its flame pulsed, silver light spilling across the stone, and this time, the cracks deepened, sand sliding away, stone grinding faintly beneath his feet. The ground yielded. A narrow passage opened beneath the platform, stairs descending into shadow. The traveler inhaled slowly, steadying the hum in his chest, and he lifted his lantern and began to descend. The air cooled sharply. Sand gave way to smooth stone walls, carved in spirals that wound tighter the deeper he went. The silence grew heavier, pressing like the deep of water. Each step felt like entering not just a chamber, but a memory dot at the passage's end. He entered a vast hollow chamber. The chamber's walls curved high, etched with thousands of tiny spirals, each one unique yet joined into a seamless flow. The floor was smooth, polished by time, its surface faintly reflective, as though it held the shimmer of water, though none was present. At the center stood a great stone basin, wide and shallow. Its surface was filled not with water, but with light silver and shifting, glowing faintly like a pool of liquid flame. The traveler froze, breath-catching. His chest pulsed with the hum, louder here than anywhere else he had stood. This was no ordinary chamber. This was a vault. He stepped closer, lantern raised. The basin's light shifted with his approach, rippling like water, disturbed by unseen hands. Then, faintly, voices rose. Not loud, not singular, but countless whispers, woven into one continuous flow. The voices were not fractured like the shadows, nor whole like the ritual. They were echoes. Memories. The traveler knelt beside the basin, its glow reflected in his lantern, weaving with his flame until the haze around it brightened, silver threads stretching between them. He leaned forward, listening. The whispers formed, fragments of stories, a child learning to sway her flame for the first time, an elder leading a spiral wider than the dunes themselves, a wanderer, like him, carrying shadows into silence, a village swept by storms, voices fading but not erased. Each memory flowed seamlessly into the next, like countless drops feeding a single stream. The traveler's chest tightened. These were the lives of those who had come before, kept safe in the silence, not lost, not forgotten, held. He bowed his head. So this is what it means to be carried. The basin pulsed faintly, as if answering. The whispers grew clearer, weaving into a rhythm. His lantern flared, its haze curling into a spiral above the basin. For a moment, he felt as if his flame was no longer his own, but part of the vault itself. A thread woven into its endless pattern. The hum in his chest deepened, steady and strong. And then within the whispers a voice rose above the rest. Finder, you walk where few return. The traveler's breath caught. The voice was not fractured, not fading. It was direct, intentional. The silence does not only carry forward, it carries backward too. Each flame is a mirror. Each listener reflects the ones who came before. The basin shimmered, its glow rippling. You are not only mender, you are bridge. The words settled in his chest like stone, heavy yet certain. He lifted his lantern. Its flame pulsed once, bright and steady, silver haze swirling in calm spirals. He understood the desert had not led him here by chance. The road, the ruins, the chamber, each step was part of a thread, weaving him not just into the present silence, but into its entire history. He was not merely carrying the forgotten, he was becoming part of them. Slowly, he rose from the basin. The whispers softened, fading into a steady hum that echoed faintly in his chest. He bowed once, lantern lifted. I will listen, he whispered. Not only forward, not only here, but backward too. None will be lost. The basin pulsed faintly, then stilled. The chamber dimmed. The silence settled. When he returned to the surface, dusk painted the dunes in red and gold. His lantern burned steady, but its haze carried new threads, swirling not just silver but faint reflections of countless other flames. The desert stretched endless, patient. He walked back toward his village, lantern high, the hum in his chest, deeper than ever. That night, during the ritual, the villagers noticed immediately. His flame no longer pulsed alone. It shimmered with echoes, carrying a rhythm that was both old and new. When his lantern joined the circle, the hum deepened again, layered with voices long past, weaving into their silence. The elder watched with solemn eyes, his staff planted firm in the sand. He did not speak, but he bowed faintly. He knew what had happened. The silence had widened once more. The days after his descent into the vault moved like dreams. The traveler joined the rituals as he always had, but his lantern no longer sang alone. Every sway of its flame carried threads of countless others. When children clutched their flames, they leaned toward him, as though drawn by something they could not name. Elders watched him silently, their gazes reverent yet cautious. The elder himself said little, but one evening, after the ritual, as the lanterns dimmed and the villagers drifted away, he approached with staff in hand. You carry them now, he said softly, his voice neither questioning nor uncertain. The ones we thought gone, the voices swallowed by the sand. The traveler nodded, his lantern pulsed faintly, haze curling into spirals. They are not lost, they are echoes. The desert holds them still. The elder closed his eyes. Then you understand. To bond is not only to mend what is fractured, it is to carry both, what is and what was. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay beneath the beams of his dwelling, lantern by his side, listening to the faint hum in his chest. It no longer beat only with his own flame. It thrummed with the rhythm of countless others, each echo weaving into the silence. But with it came weight, a question pressing at the edges of his thoughts. If he was a bridge, then where did that bridge lead? Before dawn, he rose and carried his lantern out to the dunes. The air was cool, the stars faint, the horizon painted silver with the last threads of night. The desert stretched unbroken, endless. Yet, as he walked, the sand glowed faintly beneath his steps. Forming the narrow road once more, it curved differently now, leading him not toward the ruins but deeper, into a hollow where the dunes sank low. The silence there was heavier, its hum vibrating faintly in his chest like the strike of a deep drum. He paused. Lantern raised. At the hollow's center lay a shallow depression in the sand. Nothing built, nothing carved, just an emptiness, as if the desert had held something once and now only its absence remained. The traveler stepped into the hollow. The sand shifted beneath him, faint whispers rising. Not fractured, not whole hesitant, knelt, lowering his lantern. Its light spilled across the hollow, silver haze curling outward like water poured into a bowl. The whispers grew clearer. We were carried. We were silenced. We remain. The travelers' breath slowed. These were not the voices of one village or one people. They were older, deeper threads, woven into the desert itself. His chest thrummed with their rhythm. I hear you, he whispered. I carry you. The whisper softened, folding into the hum. Then the sand shifted. From beneath the hollow, faint lines unfurled, glowing like the veins he had followed before. They spread outward in spirals, weaving across the dunes, stretching far into the horizon. The traveler rose, lantern high. The spirals glowed brighter, each one resonating faintly with his flame. It was as though the entire desert was etched, with unseen spirals, waiting only for a binder to reveal them. He understood, then. The desert was not only a keeper of silence, it was silence itself. Every dune, every storm, every hollow carried the weight of voices past. And now, those threads flowed through him. His chest pulsed with the hum, steady and deep. The weight he had once feared no longer pressed, it flowed. Moving like water through his flame, he whispered into the night, I am not apart from you, I am you. The spirals shimmered once, then faded back into sand. The hollow stilled, the silence steadied. When he returned to the village, the elder was waiting. He studied the traveler's lantern, its silver haze calm and steady. You followed the road again, the elder said. The traveler nodded. The desert revealed its spirals. Not only in ruins, everywhere. The elder's gaze deepened. Then you see now, the silence is not only ours to carry, it carries us to. The traveler lowered his lantern, its flame glowing steady between them. I see. The elder placed his hand over his chest, bowing faintly. Then walk with care, Binder. The desert listens more closely to you now than it does to any of us. That night, during the ritual, when the traveler's flame joined the circle, the hum rose deeper still. The villagers swayed, their steps guided not only by their own flames but by the resonance flowing through his. For a moment, it was as though the desert itself swayed with them, dunes shifting faintly at the horizon. The silence had grown larger than the hollow, larger than the village, and in its center stood the traveler, no longer only guest, no longer only listener, but bridge. The night after the spirals revealed themselves, the traveler could not sleep. He lay awake, lantern by his side, listening to the hum in his chest. It no longer pulsed in rhythm with the village, it stretched beyond, wide as the horizon. Every shift of the dunes, every flicker of the wind, every faint echo from the ruins hummed within him. And yet, amid the endless chorus, there was something else, a gap, a silence so deep that it was not part of the whole, a silence apart. He sat up, pulse quickening. His lantern's flame flickered once, then steadied. The gap was not in the village, not in the ruins. It was beyond, calling before dawn. He rose and left the hollow, carrying his lantern into the desert. The road appeared beneath his steps, glowing faintly, winding through the dunes. He walked for hours, until the sun rose high and the heat pressed heavy. Still, the road glowed, leading him forward. At last, he came to a basin between three tall dunes. Its surface was unbroken sand, smooth as water, untouched by wind. No spiral marked it, no whisper rose from it. It was empty. He stepped into the basin. His lantern glowed faintly, but its light did not curl outward as it had before. His chest hummed, but faintly, unsteady. The silence here was not expectant. It was hollow. He knelt, lowering his lantern to the sand. The flame pulsed weakly, silver haze curling and then breaking apart. For the first time since the shadows, he felt it falter. Whispers did not rise. Echoes did not weave. Only silence pressed, heavy, unyielding. The traveler bowed his head, breathing slow. He whispered into the void, I carry you. No answer. He whispered again, you are not lost. Still nothing. The silence deepened, pressing harder, as though it would smother his flame. The traveler's chest ached. He closed his eyes, gripping the lantern tight. For a moment, fear surged, fear that this was not silence at all, but absence. An emptiness nothing could fill. The hum in his chest faltered, his lantern's flame dimmed. And then he remembered the basin of echoes, the vault's words, you are not only Menda, you are bridge. If silence carried forward and backward, then even emptiness must be part of it. He steadied his breath, bowing. Lower. If you are nothing, then I carry nothing. If you are absence, then I carry absence too. The silence shifted, not breaking, not filling, simply shifting. The hollow pressure eased, the dim flame in his lantern steadied, its haze curling faintly again. The basin of sand rippled once, as though a breath had passed through it, and the hum in his chest returned, slow and deep. Not all silences could be healed, not all gaps could be filled, but they could be carried. The traveler rose, lantern high, its flame burned steady, silver haze curling calm and unbroken. He bowed to the basin of sand, whispering, "You are carried." The dunes stirred faintly, their edges shimmering with threads of light. The road glowed once more, winding back toward the village. By the time he returned, dusk had fallen. The villagers gathered in the hollow, lanterns swaying, flames steady. The elder watched as the traveler stepped into the circle, his lantern glowing with calm strength. Without a word, the traveler joined the ritual. His flame pulsed, its haze curling outward in perfect spirals. The hum rose, steady, layered, deeper than before. The villagers swayed, voices weaving with his. Even the dunes at the horizon seemed to shift in rhythm. The silence had grown again. Later, when the ritual ended, the elder approached him. "You walked further." The traveler bowed his head. "The desert tested me, not with fracture, with emptiness." The elder's eyes deepened. "And what did you learn?" The traveler lifted his lantern. Its flame shimmered steady, haze curling, calm, that even absence must be carried. Silence is not always whole, it is also hollow, but both belong. The elder bowed, placing a hand over his chest. "Then you are ready." The traveler frowned faintly. "For what?" The elder's gaze lifted to the dunes, shimmering faintly in the distance. "For what lies beyond the road." The desert does not reveal itself to one who listens, only to one who carries. That night, the traveler lay beneath the stars, lantern beside him, its flame pulsed calm and steady, haze curling in soft spirals. The silence around him no longer pressed, no longer fractured. It cradled him, and as he drifted into sleep, he knew the desert's trials were not ending, they were only beginning. The night after the basin of emptiness, the traveler dreamt differently until now. His dreams had been of spirals, of voices weaving, of paths etched faintly in the sand. But this night, he saw towers, tall, thin, shimmering, like glass, rising from dunes that glowed beneath a silver sky. Bridges of light stretched between them, swaying gently as though woven not of stone or wood but of whispers. And at the city's heart, a single lantern burned brighter than the stars. He woke with his chest thrumming, the hum deep and insistent. His lantern pulsed beside him, its flame curling upward as if reaching for something unseen. The desert was calling again. Before dawn, he rose, carried his lantern, and walked to the edge of the dunes. The road appeared beneath his steps, brighter now than ever before. Its lines wound outward, twisting in curves, leading not to ruins, not to hollows, but deeper toward the horizon. He walked for hours, the sun climbing, the sand shimmering. The dunes grew taller, their slopes steep, their ridges sharp. The silence grew heavy, humming in his chest until each step felt like a drumbeat. And then, as the sun reached its height, the dunes parted. The city rose before him, not built of stone, not carved of wood woven of mirage. Its towers shimmered, translucent yet firm, their surfaces glinting like glass. Spirals etched the tower's sides, glowing faintly with the same silver light as his lantern. Bridges arched between them, swaying as though alive. The air shimmered with faint haze, curling in spirals above rooftops. The traveler froze, breath shallow, his chest pulsed with the hum, steady and deep. This was no ruin, this was alive. He stepped forward, lantern high. The city shifted faintly, its outlines trembling as though uncertain of its form. But when his lantern's light spilled across its towers, they steadied, growing sharper, more defined. The spiral carvings glowed brighter, welcoming. The traveler entered. The streets were empty, silent, yet not hollow. The silence here was deep, resonant, flowing like water beneath the surface. His flame pulsed in rhythm, haze curling outward with each step. He paused before one of the bridges, its arch swaying faintly. Its surface shimmered like woven threads of light. Slowly, he placed a foot upon it. It held. As he crossed, whispers rose faintly, flowing through the bridge itself. Not voices of fracture, not echoes of memory, living silence. A city alive, though no people walked its streets. At the bridge's end, he reached a wide plaza. Its floor was etched with an immense spiral, glowing faintly, its lines stretching into the towers themselves. At the plaza's center burned a lantern taller than any he had seen. Its flame was not silver, but white, pure and steady, curling into spirals that reached the sky. The traveler approached slowly, reverently. His chest thrummed in resonance. His lantern pulsed, its haze reaching faintly toward the greater flame. He knelt before it, bowing low. The silence deepened. And then, faintly, a voice rose. "You walk as bridge." The traveler lifted his head. The voice was not fractured, not distant. It was steady, woven into the flame itself. You carry what is, but will you carry what will be?" The traveler's chest tightened. His lantern pulsed once, bright and unsteady. "What will be is not yet silence," he whispered. The flame pulsed, spirals curling higher, and yet silence must carry it. For every voice will one day fall, every step will one day fade. The bridge does not end in the present. It extends into the horizon. The traveler lowered his head. He had carried shadows. He had carried absence. He had carried echoes. But the future, voices not yet spoken, lives not yet lived. His flame pulsed, again, steady this time. "If silence must carry it, then I will carry it." The great flame shimmered, its spirals brightening. The towers around the plaza pulsed with light, whispers flowing through them in waves. "Then walk, binder," the voice said, soft yet vast. "Carry not only the broken and the gone, but the yet to come. You are not only bridge, you are path." The traveler bowed, lantern lifted high. His flame flared, its haze curling outward in spirals larger than before. For a moment, he felt it extend beyond him, stretching into horizons he could not see. The city shimmered, towers pulsing faintly, bridges glowing brighter. The silence resonated, alive, endless, and then, slowly, it stilled. When the traveler left, the city, its towers, shimmered faintly in the distance, fading with each step until they were no more than mirage. The desert stretched empty once more, dunes unbroken, yet his chest thrummed steady, his lantern pulsed calm. The city was not gone. It was carried. As he walked back toward his village, the horizon glowed faintly with spirals, each one waiting. The traveler returned at dusk. The dunes glowed faintly in the waning light, their ridges casting long shadows across the desert floor. His lantern burned steady, haze curling outward in spirals, smooth and unbroken. But there was something different, now an echo not of the past, not of the present, but of something yet to come. When he entered the village, the people noticed at once. Children paused in their play, their small flames swaying faintly in rhythm with his. Elders lifted their eyes, sensing the change. The hum in his chest was no longer only resonance, it was anticipation, steady and certain, as though the silence itself looked forward through him. The elder stepped from the circle of huts, staff in hand. His eyes, deep as dunes in moonlight, studied the traveler's flame. "You have walked further," he said softly. The traveler bowed his head. "I saw a city, not stone, not wood mirage. A lantern burned at its heart. It told me I must carry not only what was and what is, but what will be." The elder's hand tightened on his staff. For a long moment, he was silent. Then he placed a hand over his chest. "Then you have seen what few have ever seen. You no longer walk only with us. You walk with the silence itself." That night, the ritual began, as always. The villagers gathered in the hollow, their lanterns swaying, flames curling in soft spirals. The hum rose slowly, steady and deep, weaving like threads into one tapestry. The traveler stepped into the circle, lantern lifted. His flame pulsed bright, haze curling outward. But this time, the spirals did not only mirror the rhythm of those around him. They bent forward, stretching faintly beyond the circle, reaching toward the dunes. The villagers felt it. Their steps faltered, then steadied, guided by his flame. The hum deepened, no longer bound within the hollow. It spread outward, vibrating through the sand, echoing faintly at the horizon. For the first time, the ritual did not end with silence, it ended with expectancy. Afterward, the villagers gathered in hushed clusters, whispering. "What does it mean?" one asked. "Why does the silence look outward?" said another. "Where does it lead?" The elder raised his staff, stilling them. "The desert has chosen. The binder does not only carry our voices, he carries the road ahead. We are not only listeners now, we are walkers. The villagers fell silent, eyes wide. For generations they had swayed in circles, carrying silence as inheritance. But now, the desert itself had opened the horizon. The traveler lay awake long into the night, lantern burning beside him. Its flame pulsed calm, haze curling outward, faint spirals bending toward the horizon. He thought of the city, of the voice that had spoken. You are not only bridge, you are path. What did it mean to be a path? To carry silence forward into what was not yet known. His chest thrummed with the hum, steady and deep. He did not yet know, but he felt the weight of it. Not burden responsibility. The next morning, as dawn broke, the villagers gathered again, not for ritual, but for guidance. A mother stepped forward, child at her side, flame trembling in her small lantern. If silence carries forward, should we follow where it leads? An elder added softly, if the dunes are calling us, we must know how to walk. All eyes turned to the traveler. He stood in the center of the hollow, lantern raised. Its flame shimmered faintly, haze curling outward in spirals that bent toward the horizon. His chest hummed steady. You ask if we should follow, he said slowly. The silence does not force, it calls. The road is not commanded, is invitation. He lifted his lantern higher. But I will walk it, and I will carry you with me. The villagers bowed their heads, flames swaying faintly. For a moment, the hollow was silent, not of absence, but of agreement. The elder struck his staff upon the sand. Then, so it shall be. From this night, our rituals will not only bind what is fractured, they will prepare us for what lies ahead. We will no longer only circle, we will move, the villagers murmured, voices steady, flames pulsing. Something had shifted, not only in the traveler but in all of them. The silence was no longer only about holding, it was about stepping. That night's ritual was unlike any before. The villagers gathered in their circle, lanterns swaying, but when the hum rose, the traveler lifted his flame high and began to step forward, slowly, deliberately, his spirals bent outward, carrying the silence ahead of him. And the villagers followed, not in a circle this time, but in a slow, winding path through the hollow, their flames weaving behind his. The hum deepened, echoing faintly through the dunes. For the first time, the silence moved. Later, when the ritual ended, the traveler stood at the edge of the village, lantern raised. The horizon glowed faintly in the distance, as though waiting. His chest thrummed, steady and certain. He was no longer only listener, no longer only mender, no longer only bridge. He was path, and the desert was opening before him. The following dusk, the hollow filled earlier than usual. The villagers arrived with their lanterns before the stars had even pierced the horizon. Their flames flickered faintly in the twilight, but their eyes shone brighter than ever. Word had spread quickly. Tonight would not be a circle. Tonight, they would walk. The traveler stood at the center, lantern raised. His chest thrummed with the hum, steady and deep, weaving through the quiet air. Behind him, the elder stepped forward, staff in hand. The binder will walk the silence, he said, his voice carrying across the hollow, and we will follow. Tonight, the silence does not end where we stand. Tonight, it begins where we step. A ripple of breath moved through the crowd, half anticipation, half reverence. The traveler turned toward the dunes. His lantern pulsed, silver haze curling outward in wide arcs. Slowly, he began to walk. The villagers followed, one by one, their lanterns swaying in rhythm. The hum rose, not confined to the hollow but flowing outward with each step. The sand beneath their feet glowed faintly, spirals unfurling with their path. The traveler's chest thrummed stronger, his flame pulsed brighter. The desert was listening. They walked beyond the huts, beyond the hollow where rituals had always been bound. The dunes loomed tall, shadows stretching across the sand. Yet the spirals glowed faintly with every step. Winding forward, children clutched their lanterns tightly, their eyes wide but steady. Elders leaned on their staffs, their steps slow but unyielding. The hum threaded through them all, one voice, one rhythm. The silence around them deepened, but it did not press. It opened at the base of a tall dune. The traveler paused. His lantern pulsed bright haze curling upward. He turned to face the villagers. This is the road, he said softly. Not only mine, but ours. The silence is not carried by one, it is carried by all. He lowered his lantern. Its spirals spread across the sand, curling around their feet. The villagers watched, their flames pulsing in resonance. For the first time, the desert itself seemed to breathe with them. Then, faintly, whispers rose. Not fractured echoes, not hollow absence. Something new. The villagers froze, eyes wide. Their flames trembled, but did not falter. The whispers grew clearer, weaving into the hum. They were not voices of the past, not voices of the gone. They were voices of those standing there, carried forward, reflected back. It was as if the silence itself had begun to echo their own presence, casting it into the horizon, carrying it ahead like a promise. A child gasped softly, "It's us." An elder placed a hand over her chest. The silence remembers not only what has been, it remembers what we are now. The traveler's chest thrummed, steady, stronger than ever. His flame-pulsed haze, curling outward in spirals that grew brighter, stretching up the dune. He whispered, "The path is not only forward, it is reflection." The silence carries not only memory, not only absence, but the living as well. The villagers lifted their lanterns higher, their hum rose, voices weaving with the whispers. Step by step, they climbed the dune, their flames casting light across the slope. At the summit, they paused, gazing out at the vast horizon. The dunes stretched endless, silver in moonlight, their ridges glowing faintly as if traced by invisible spirals. For a moment, no one spoke, no one needed to. The silence itself spoke through them. The elder stepped beside the traveler, staff planted in the sand. "You have given us something we did not know we had," he said softly. "The silence is not only inheritance, it is presence." The traveler bowed his head. "It is all things, what was, what is, what will be." He lifted his lantern. Its spirals curled wide, bending toward the horizon. The villagers' flames pulsed with it, weaving into one. For the first time, they felt not like keepers of silence, but companions of it. Not only bearers of memory, but voices alive within it. They descended the dune together, their steps slow, their hum steady. The spirals glowed faintly with each movement, fading behind them but not vanishing, carried forward, etched into the silence itself. By the time they returned to the hollow, their lanterns swayed calm, their voices soft but strong. The ritual did not end as it once had. It ended with quiet joy, a resonance that lingered even after their flames dimmed. The traveler stood at the hollow's edge, gazing toward the horizon. His chest thrummed, steady and certain. He was no longer walking alone. The silence had expanded, not only within him, but within them all. That night, as he lay beneath the stars, the traveler dreamt again of the city of mirage. But this time, he did not see it empty. He saw figures within it, villagers walking its glowing streets, flames swaying, whispers weaving into spirals of light. And at the city's heart, the great lantern burned brighter than ever, its flame curling not only upward, but outward, reaching into endless sky. The days that followed changed everything. The villagers no longer saw themselves as bound only to their hollow. Each dusk, when they lit their lanterns, they felt the road stretch beyond the circle, bending toward the horizon. And though they still gathered together, their rituals no longer ended in stillness. They ended in steps. The desert itself seemed to shift in response. Spirals glowed more vividly in the sand, curling outward whenever they walked. The dunes hummed faintly, their ridges shimmering as though light slept just beneath the surface. The silence was no longer background, it was companion, walking with them. One night, the traveler led them farther than before. His lantern pulsed steady, haze curling outward in wide arcs. The villagers followed in a long spiral path, their flames weaving together, voices rising in hum. The stars blazed above, brighter than ever, as if leaning close to listen. The dunes stretched endless, yet tonight they did not feel vast and empty. They felt alive, resonant, carrying the villagers' hum forward. Each step seemed to settle into the sand and rise again, echoing faintly across the horizon. At last, the path brought them to a wide, flat expanse between three great dunes. The sand here was smoother than any they had seen, its surface untouched, glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. The traveler paused, lifting his lantern high, its spirals spread outward, curling across the basin. Slowly, the villagers formed a circle around him, lanterns swaying, flames pulsing. The hum deepened, weaving through them all, and then the silence shifted. It began with a faint vibration beneath their feet. The sand rippled, not from wind, not from movement, but from resonance. Spirals unfurled across the basin, curling outward like waves. The villagers gasped softly, yet held their flames steady. The traveler's chest thrummed harder, his lantern pulsing in rhythm. He whispered, "The silence hears us." The ripples grew stronger. From beneath the sand, threads of silver light rose, curling upward in spirals. They drifted into the air, weaving between the villagers, settling around their flames. For the first time, the silence did not only reflect, it gave. The villagers' lanterns brightened, their flames shimmering with silver haze. Children clutched their lanterns in wonder. Elders bowed their heads in reverence. One by one, their flames began to pulse in perfect rhythm. As if woven into one great flame spread across many lanterns, the hum deepened further. Not many voices, but one, layered and vast. The traveler's chest trembled. His flame curled high, spirals spreading outward. He felt not only his own hum, not only theirs, but something larger, something endless. The silence was no longer carried. It was carrying them. The elder's voice rose, breaking through the hum yet woven into it. The desert does not only test us, it does not only remember. Tonight, it walks with us. The villagers bowed their heads, their voices blending into the resonance. The traveler lowered his lantern to the sand. Its flame shimmered, haze curling into the silver threads rising from the earth. For a moment, the flame grew so bright that it seemed not bound by glass at all, but free, woven into the air itself. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "We are not only bridges, we are not only paths, we are silence itself." The basin glowed, silver spirals curling higher, weaving together into a single spiral that stretched into the sky. The villagers gazed upward, their flames swaying, their voices hushed. The spiral shimmered faintly against the stars, pulsing once, twice, then fading gently into the night. When it was gone, the silence that remained was vast but tender, not hollow, not fractured whole. The villagers stood together, lanterns swaying. For a long time, no one spoke, no one needed to. When they returned to the hollow, they carried more than light, they carried certainty. Their rituals had begun as inheritance, holding silence so it would not fracture. But now, they knew. They were not only listeners, not only mentors, not only keepers. They were companions of silence. The desert had shown them. Silence was not something they carried behind them, nor even something they carried beside them. It was something that walked within them, ahead of them, beyond them. That night, the traveler lay awake beneath the stars. His lantern burned steady, its flame curling calm spirals. His chest thrummed with the hum, but it no longer felt like burden, it felt like belonging. In his dreams, the city of mirage rose again, but this time, he did not see it empty, nor filled only with villagers. He saw it alive with countless lights, lanterns swaying, voices humming. A city not of silence bound, but of silence lived, and at its heart, the great flame pulsed once more, spirals curling endlessly into the horizon. The desert was no longer only endless sand, it was endless road, and they were no longer only travelers. They were silence, walking. Dawn broke quietly over the dunes. The horizon glowed with pale gold, shadows stretching long and thin across the sand. The village stirred slowly, but today there was no ordinary rhythm. Today, the silence hummed louder, deeper, vibrating through the huts, through the hollow, through every chest. It was not just ritual calling, it was the desert itself. The traveler rose early, lantern in hand. Its flame burned steady, spirals, curling outward in wide arcs. He had grown used to the hum in his chest, but this morning it was stronger and insistent pull, a steady summons. When he stepped outside, he saw the villagers waiting, not in the hollow, not gathered in circles, but standing at the edge of the dunes, lanterns lit even in daylight, their flames swaying faintly in the dawn wind. Children clutched their lanterns tightly, elders leaned on staffs, every face solemn yet bright. They did not need words. They knew, today, they would walk farther than ever before. The elder approached the traveler, staff planted firmly in the sand. His eyes, though lined with age, shone steady. "The silence does not wait," he said softly. "It moves, it calls, and we must answer." The traveler bowed his head, lantern lifted high. "Then let us walk." They began at sunrise. The desert stretched endless before them, dunes glowing faintly in the light, The villagers walked in a long spiral path, following the traveler's lantern. Their flames pulsed in rhythm, their voices weaving into a hum that rose and fell like breath. With each step, the sand shimmered faintly, spirals glowing beneath their feet. The silence deepened, yet it was not heavy. It was vast, expansive, carrying them forward. Children laughed softly, their lanterns pulsing brighter. Elders hummed low, their voices steady, guiding the rhythm. For the first time, the journey did not feel uncertain. It felt inevitable, as though the desert itself had been waiting for this moment all along. By midday, the dunes grew taller, their ridges sharp, their shadows long. The heat pressed heavy, yet the villagers did not falter. Their hum carried them, their flames steadied on. The traveler paused at the crest of a dune, gazing out at the horizon. For a moment, his chest tightened. The sand stretched endless, unbroken. But then, faintly, he saw it. A glow. Not mirage, not haze, but steady light pulsing far away. His flame curled high in response, haze bending toward it. His chest thrummed louder. The silence was not empty ahead, it was waiting. He turned to the villagers. "There is a lantern," he said softly, "at the horizon." They lifted their flames higher, murmurs rippling through them. The hum deepened, carrying into the dunes. They would follow. The walk grew harder as the sun descended. The sand grew softer, each step sinking deep. The wind picked up, carrying faint whispers across the dunes. But the villagers pressed on, their lanterns steady, their hum unwavering. At dusk, they reached a wide plateau, its surface flat and smooth. The glow on the horizon had grown brighter, pulsing in rhythm with their own flames. The traveler raised his lantern, its haze curled outward, spirals reaching across the plateau. The villagers formed a wide circle around him, their flames swaying, their hum rising. The silence deepened, and then, faintly, the sand beneath them rippled at first. It was gentle, like water touched by wind, but slowly, the ripples grew stronger, spirals unfurling across the plateau. Silver threads rose from the sand, curling upward, weaving between the villagers. Their flames pulsed brighter, their hum steadier. The elder's voice trembled as he whispered, "The desert walks with us." Again, the traveler bowed his head, lantern lifted high. His chest thrummed with the resonance, deeper than ever before. But this time, it was not only reflection, not only memory, not only presence. It was guidance. The ripples formed a wide spiral, stretching outward across the plateau, its lines glowing faintly. At its center, a path unfurled, curling toward the horizon where the great glow pulsed. The villagers gasped softly, their lanterns swaying. Children pointed, elders murmured prayers, their voices trembling with awe. The desert had not only acknowledged them, it had given them a road. The traveler lowered his lantern to the spiral's edge. Its flame curled, haze bending forward along the glowing path. His chest thrummed, steady, calm. He turned to the villagers. "This is the way." Their flames pulsed in answer. The elder raised his staff. "Then let us walk it together." As the night fell, the villagers began their march along the spiral road, their lanterns swaying, their voices humming. The dunes loomed on all sides, but the path glowed beneath their feet, guiding them forward. The silence was no longer only companion, it was guide, and at the horizon, the great glow pulsed steady, waiting. The spiral road shimmered beneath their feet. Each step the villagers took set the sand aglow, faint spirals curling outward, fading slowly behind them. It was as though the desert itself was recording their passage, weaving their presence into its endless fabric. The traveler walked at the front, lantern raised high. His flame pulsed steady, haze curling in arcs that stretched forward. Behind him, children carried their lanterns with trembling excitement. Elders leaned on staffs but did not falter, and the hum of voices rose in calm rhythm, guiding every step. The silence walked with them felt not as emptiness, but as a vast companion. As the spiral path unfurled deeper into the dunes, strange things began to appear at first. They were faint shapes along the horizon, suggestions of towers, faint shadows of trees, glimmers of water. The villagers gasped softly, their flames trembling. "Mirages," an elder whispered. But these mirages did not flicker. They pulsed in rhythm with their hum, as if alive. Children pointed, wide-eyed. A boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. "I see a village, just like ours." The traveler paused, gazing at the illusions. His flame pulsed brighter, haze curling outward in wide spirals. Slowly, the mirages faded, dissolving into silver mist. He turned back to the villagers. "The silence tests us," he said softly. "It shows us what we long for, but not what we are meant to reach." The elder nodded, his staff pressing firm into the sand. "We must not stop for shadows, only for truth." They continued, step by step, their hum deepening. The spiral road curved gently, its glow steady, but the silence shifted again. This time, it did not bring mirages, it brought echoes. The villagers froze as voices rose from the dunes, whispers soft and familiar. Some heard the voices of loved ones long gone. Others heard laughter from childhood. A few heard cries of sorrow that had once silenced them. Children clutched their lanterns tightly. Elders bowed their heads, eyes glistening. The traveler felt it too. His chest thrummed with the hum, but beneath it he heard faint laughter of his father, who had taught him the rhythm of silence. For a moment, his steps faltered, but then he raised his lantern high, spirals curling outward. His flame pulsed strong, drowning out the whisper. He whispered back, voice steady, "I carry you, but I must walk." And the whisper faded. The villagers watched, and slowly they began to respond to the echoes they heard. One woman lifted her lantern and whispered, "I will not forget you, but I will not stop." An elder bowed deeply, murmuring, "Your voice is carried, but I must go forward." A child, trembling, whispered, "I love you, but I must walk." One by one, their flames pulsed brighter, their hum deepening until the whispers dissolved into silence once more. The spiral road glowed brighter beneath their feet. By nightfall, the stars stretched wide above, clear and sharp. The villagers rested briefly, lanterns set in a circle on the sand. Their flames swayed together, forming a quiet spiral that pulsed gently with the hum. The elder leaned on his staff, eyes lifted to the horizon where the great globe pulsed faintly. "We are tested," he said softly, "but each test strengthens us. Each step carries us closer." The traveler nodded, his chest thrumming steady. He gazed at the villagers, their faces weary yet calm, their lanterns bright. He thought of the mirages, of the whispers, of how easily they might have faltered, how easily they might have stopped, but they had not. They had walked on. When they resumed their journey, the desert grew darker, the wind colder, yet their flames did not waver. Their hum deepened, weaving into one sound that carried across the dunes. The spiral road stretched onward, glowing steadily, curling toward the horizon. The silence around them shifted once more, not as test, not as challenge, but as presence. They felt it, not pressing, not calling, but walking with them, as though the desert itself had joined their procession. The traveler lifted his lantern high, its spirals curling into the sky. His chest thrummed, steady and strong. "We are not alone," he whispered. The villagers lifted their lanterns, their flames swaying, their voices humming louder. And as they walked, they knew this was no longer only their road. It was the desert's road as well. And ahead, the great globe pulsed brighter, waiting. The spiral road stretched farther than their eyes could follow. By the second day of walking, the villagers began to feel the weight of distance. The dunes rolled endlessly, one crest leading to another, the glow of the horizon lantern still pulsing, but always just beyond reach. Children's steps slowed, elders leaned harder on their staffs. Even the hum grew softer, though it never stopped. The traveler walked at the front, lantern raised high. His chest thrummed steady, but he felt the strain. His flame curled wide, haze spreading across the sand, yet he sensed the heaviness pressing into every heart behind him. It was not only exhaustion of the body, it was exhaustion of the spirit. The silence was testing them again. That night, they rested in the hollow of a dune. Their lanterns were set in a circle, flames pulsing faintly. No one spoke. Children leaned against their mothers. Elders sat with bowed heads. The glow at the horizon shimmered faintly in the distance, pulsing slow, as though waiting. But it looked no closer than it had the day before. For the first time, a murmur of doubt rose among them. "Will we ever reach it?" whispered a young man, clutching his lantern tightly. "Perhaps it is a trick," murmured another. "We are wandering into nothing." An elder sighed. The traveler listened, his chest thrumming heavy. For a moment, he too wondered, was this glow another mirage, another test, destined to fade as they drew near? He lowered his gaze to his lantern, its flame curling calm spirals. It pulsed steady, unwavering, and he realized the glow ahead did not fade. It endured. He rose, lifting his lantern high. Its haze curled outward, silver spirals sweeping across the dune. The silence does not lead us into nothing, he said, softly. It does not carry shadows. It carries truth. If the glow remains, it is because it waits for us. The villagers raised their eyes, their lanterns swaying faintly. The hum deepened, fragile but steady. They believed they would continue. At dawn, they resumed their journey. The desert tested them again, harsher this time. The wind grew strong, lifting sand into the air, obscuring the spiral road. The glowing lines beneath their feet dimmed, nearly vanishing. Beneath the shifting rains, children cried out, clutching their lanterns. Elders shielded their flames with their robes. The hum broke into fragments, scattered by the storm. The traveler pressed forward, his flame pulsing brighter, haze curling into the wind. His chest thrummed with steady rhythm, though each breath was heavy with sand. We must not lose the road, he called out, his voice barely carrying over the wind. Hold your lanterns high. One by one, the villagers lifted their flames. Their light cut faintly through the storm, weaving together in spirals. Slowly, the glowing path beneath their feet brightened, responding to their unity. The storm howled louder, but the road did not vanish. By midday, the storm passed, leaving the dunes scattered with ridges and valleys of fresh sand. The villagers staggered, weary but unbroken. Their flames swayed steady, their voices soft but unyielding. The elder leaned on his staff, gazing at the faint spirals beneath their feet. The silence tests us, he said hoarsely. It scatters us, but it does not break us. The traveler bowed his head, because the silence is not against us. It walks with us. It wants us to be whole. As dusk fell, they reached a wide ridge, from which the horizon stretched in every direction. And there, far ahead, the great glow pulsed brighter than ever before. It was no mirage, no trick of light. It burned steady, silver and calm, its spirals curling faintly upward. The villagers gasped softly, their lanterns trembling. It is real, whispered a child. It waits for us, murmured an elder. The traveler raised his lantern high. His flame pulsed in rhythm with the glow, spirals curling outward in answer. He turned to the villagers. We are close. Their hum deepened, voices weaving together, strong once more. They descended the ridge, their flames swaying in unison, their steps steady, and for the first time, the glow ahead did not seem distant. It seemed near. That night, they camped at the base of a towering dune, their lanterns set in a spiral. Their flames pulsed calm, their hum deep and certain. The silence around them was vast, but it was not heavy. It was tender, embracing. The traveler lay awake beneath the stars, chest thrumming steady. He gazed toward the horizon, where the glow shimmered faintly. He knew now the silence was not leading them astray. It was leading them home. The night air was cool when they began to climb the great dune. It rose before them like a wall of silver shadow, its ridge glowing faintly beneath. The starlight, the spiral road curled upward, lines of light embedded in the sand, guiding their steps. The villagers followed in silence, their lanterns swaying, flames pulsing steady. Their hum was low but strong, carrying up the slope, echoing faintly across the dunes. The traveler walked at the front, lantern raised high. His chest thrummed with rhythm, steady and calm, though each step sank deep into the shifting sand. The climb was harder than any before, but with every breath, he felt the silence urging them forward. The glow at the horizon pulsed brighter with every step. Halfway up, the wind picked up again. Sand trickled down in fine streams, threatening to erase the glowing lines of the spiral road. Children stumbled, elders clutched their staffs. The hum wavered. For a moment, fear flickered through the group, but the traveler stopped, planting his lantern firmly into the sand. Its flame pulsed high, spirals curling outward, binding the glowing lines of the road. He turned, voice steady though his chest shook with effort. Do not look at the sand that falls. Look at the flame that endures. The villagers raised their lanterns, one by one. Their flames pulsed stronger, haze curling into the wind. The spiral lines beneath their feet brightened once more, steady against the shifting grains. The hum rose louder, steadier, and together, they climbed. That at last, they reached the crest of the dune, and there, stretched before them, lay a sight that stole every breath. The horizon glowed not with a single lantern, but with thousands, Countless flames swayed in the distance, spirals curling into the air, weaving together into one vast tapestry of light. The villagers froze, eyes wide, lanterns trembling in their hands. Children gasped, elders whispered prayers, tears shimmered in more than one face. "It is a city," the elder whispered, his voice breaking. "A city of flame." The traveler stood still, his chest thrumming harder than ever before. His flame pulsed high, curling in answer to the countless spirals ahead. He whispered softly, "This is what the silence has carried all along." They descended the dune slowly, carefully, their eyes fixed on the horizon. Each step seemed lighter, though their bodies ached. The glow ahead grew brighter, the flames swaying closer, their spirals intertwining with the wind. The silence was no longer vast and distant, it was near, tangible, breathing with them. The villagers' hum deepened, weaving into harmony. Their lanterns pulsed in rhythm with the horizon, their flames no longer small but part of something endless. By midnight, they reached the flat basin at the base of the great dune. Here, the spiral road widened, its glowing lines curling into a vast circle etched into the sand. The villagers gathered at its edge, their flames swaying, their voices hushed. The traveler stepped into the center, his lantern lifted high, his flame pulsed steady, haze curling upward, spreading across the circle. The desert responded. Silver threads rose from the sand, curling into the air, weaving around the villagers, spiraling toward the horizon glow. The elder's voice trembled as he whispered, "The silence. It joins us with them." The villagers lifted their lanterns higher. Their flames shimmered, spirals curling in wide arcs. Children laughed softly through tears. Elders bowed deeply, their voices joining into the hum. The basin glowed brighter, its spiral lines shining silver white. The hum deepened until it was no longer many voices, but one vast sound that carried into the dunes. And from the horizon, the city of flames pulsed in answer. The traveler's chest thrummed so deeply it felt as if his very being was spiraling outward. His lantern flared bright, haze curling wide, binding their circle with the horizon glow. He whispered, not to himself, not to them, but to the desert itself, "We are ready." The silence shifted once more, not heavy, not testing, not distant, but welcoming. The basin glowed so brightly that it seemed the dunes themselves breathed with light. The stars above pulsed faintly, their brilliance bending closer. The horizon flames shimmered higher, curling into the sky. The villagers stood together, lanterns swaying. For a long time, no one moved, no one spoke. And yet, in the silence, everything was said. At last, the elder stepped forward, his staff pressing firm into the glowing sand. He turned to the traveler, his eyes shining with quiet awe. "You have led us here," he said softly, "but we all have walked. The silence was never only behind us, nor ahead of us. It has always been within us." The traveler bowed his head, lantern burning steady. "We are silence, and silence is us." Their hum deepened, one final chord that carried across the desert. The city of flames shimmered brighter, its spirals curling high into the night. The final journey had begun. The basin still shimmered beneath their feet, its spiral lines glowing faintly in the night. The villagers stood together, lanterns swaying, their hum low but steady. Ahead, the horizon blazed brighter than ever before, vast city of light, countless flames spiraling into the sky. The traveler lifted his lantern high, flame curling outward in wide arcs. His chest thrummed steady, but his eyes trembled with awe. He had walked deserts, faced storms, endured silence, but never had he seen something so alive, so endless. The elder stepped forward, leaning on his staff. His voice was soft, but every villager heard it. "The road has carried us here. We can no longer doubt. The silence does not deceive, it delivers." The traveler bowed his head. "Then we must walk the last steps." They began again, slowly, carefully. The spiral road stretched out of the basin, its lines glowing brighter with each step. The villagers walked in rhythm, lanterns raised high, their hum weaving into harmony. Children's flames pulsed strong, elders' voices carried deep. The silence surrounding them no longer heavy but calm, and as they drew nearer, the city of light began to change. It was not only distant flames, it was shape. They saw walls, but not of stone walls, woven of flame, spiraling upward in silver threads. They saw towers, rising high, their peaks crowned with burning lanterns brighter than stars. They saw gates, vast and glowing, curving open in a wide embrace. The villagers gasped softly. "It waits for us," a child whispered, clutching his lantern. "It has always waited," an elder replied, voice trembling. The closer they came, the stronger the silence grew, not pressing, not suffocating, but full, vast, as though every flame carried a voice, and every voice was speaking at once, yet no sound was heard. The traveler felt his chest thrum in rhythm with it, deeper and deeper until he could hardly tell where his hum ended and the silence began. He looked back at the villagers. Their faces glowed in the silver light, eyes wide, lanterns pulsing brighter than ever. He knew then they were no longer only travelers. They were part of this at last. They reached the outer edge. The gates loomed before them, vast arcs of silver flames spiraling upward, their threads weaving and unwinding in slow, graceful patterns. The air shimmered, heedless, tender, as if the gates themselves breathed. The villagers stopped, their lanterns swaying. Their hum fell into quiet. The traveler stepped forward. His lantern pulsed steady, spirals curling upward. He placed it gently. At the base of the gate, the flame flared. The gates responded, that silver spirals unfurled, curling outward, sweeping across the dunes. Threads of light wove around the villagers, binding them gently, carrying their flames higher. The gates did not open with force. They opened with welcome. The villagers gasped as they stepped forward. Beyond the gates stretched streets, paved not with stone, but with spirals of light. Lanterns swayed above, suspended in the air, their flames curling in endless arcs. Towers of silver flame rose on all sides, their spirals weaving into the sky, and in the center, vast and calm, burned a flame larger than any they had ever seen. Lantern, as tall as a mountain, its spirals curling into the heavens. The city pulsed with rhythm, steady and calm, the same rhythm that had carried them through storms, whispers, and doubt. It was the silence. Alive. The villagers walked in awe, their lanterns swaying, their eyes wide. Children laughed softly, their faces glowing. Elders whispered prayers, tears streaming down their cheeks. "This is not only a city," the elder whispered, his staff trembling in his hand. "It is memory, it is presence, it is the heart of the desert." The traveler's chest thrummed, steady. He gazed up at the great lantern in the city's center, his flame curling higher in answer. He whispered, "This is what the silence has always been leading us toward." They gathered in the great square before the towering lantern. Its spirals curled upward into the stars, weaving the sky itself into its embrace. The villagers formed a circle, lanterns raised high, their flames pulsed in rhythm, their voices humming soft but steady. And as they did, the silence shifted once more, not distant, not testing, not even guiding, but one with them. The great lantern pulsed in rhythm with their flames, spirals curling outward across the city. Threads of silver light wove around them, binding their circle to the flame. Children giggled softly as the threads brushed their cheeks. Elders bowed their heads, overwhelmed. The traveler felt his chest thrum so deeply that it was no longer his own. It was theirs. It was the desert's. It was the silence. For a long time, no one moved, no one spoke. The silence did not ask them to dot it, only asked them to be, and they were. The great lantern pulsed above them, its spirals curling upward until they disappeared into the stars. The villagers stood at its base, their lanterns swaying faintly, their hum soft but steady. The silence embraced them, not as emptiness, not as void, but as fullness and ocean of presence in which they were held. The traveler gazed up at the towering flame. His chest thrummed so deeply he felt it was no longer his rhythm alone. The spiral haze of his lantern rose and blended with the spirals of the great flame. As though his light had always been a thread of this vast weaving dot, he whispered softly. It was never a destination. It was a return. The villagers began to move slowly through the city, their lanterns casting gentle spirals against the glowing streets. Everywhere they looked, flames swayed, lanterns suspended in air, towers glowing with slow spirals, walls woven of silver light. Yet the city did not overwhelm. It was not bright in a blinding way. It was calm, steady, as if it breathed in time with their hum. Children reached out their hands, laughing as threads of silver brushed their fingers. Elders walked with tears in their eyes, whispering names they had once thought forgotten. For in the spirals of flame, they began to see more than light. They saw memories. A mother froze as she gazed into a lantern swaying above the street. Within its spirals, she saw her child's first steps, laughter echoing across her heart. An elder touched the flame curling along a tower's base. In it, he saw his youth, running across dunes, the rhythm of silence guiding his every step. Even the children saw glimpses of moments not yet lived, memories waiting to be carried forward. The traveler walked among them, his lantern glowing, calm. In every spiral he passed, he saw fragments, his father's hand resting on his shoulder, the storm that had once nearly broken him, the hum of villagers uniting beneath the night sky. The silence was not absence. It was everything at last. They gathered once more in the great square. The elder leaned on his staff, his eyes shimmering as he looked upon the villagers. The silence is not only the desert's voice, he said softly. It is every voice we have ever carried, every memory we have ever held, every step we have ever walked. A child tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering, then silence is us. The mother smiled through her tears. Yes, it is us. And we are it. Their hum deepened, one sound weaving through the square, spirals curling upward in answer. The great lantern pulsed brighter, spirals curling high into the heavens. The city shimmered, its flames swaying in harmony with the villagers' voices. Traveler stepped into the center of the square, his lantern lifted high. Silence is not emptiness, he said softly, though every villager heard. It is presence, it is memory, it is what we carry, and what carries us. He lowered his lantern, flame curling calm. We came seeking a path, but the path was never only to the horizon. It was always here, within us, waiting to be remembered. For a long moment, there was no sound but the hum, no light but the spirals. The villagers closed their eyes, lanterns swaying, their breath slow and steady. They felt no separation between themselves and the city, between their voices and the silence. It was all one, the desert, the silence, the city of flames, and them. As dawn approached, the great lantern shimmered softly, its spirals fading into the rising sun. One by one, the towers dimmed, the walls of flames softened, until the city became no more than a haze of silver spirals drifting in the air. The villagers opened their eyes, their lanterns still glowed, but softer now, steady flames swaying gently in their hands. The elder bowed his head. The silence has shown us, we need not remain here. We carry it with us, wherever we walk. The traveler's chest thrummed steady. He turned toward the villagers, his lantern pulsing calm. We will return to our village, but we return changed. We are no longer wanderers seeking silence. We are silence, walking. The villagers nodded, their hum deepening once more, and together they turned back toward the dunes. As they left the great square, the city shimmered faintly one last time, its spirals curling upward in farewell. The silence followed them, not as emptiness, but as rhythm, steady and calm. And though the city faded behind them, they knew it had not disappeared. It lived within them now, forever. The dunes stretched before them, endless as ever. But the villagers no longer saw them as walls, no longer feared their silence. The spiral road still glowed faintly beneath their feet, but it no longer needed to guide them. Their lanterns pulsed, in calm rhythm, their flames curling slow spirals in the air. And within those spirals, each traveler felt the same steady truth. The silence had come with them. They walked in peace. Children played at the edges of the line, chasing threads of light curling from their lanterns. Their laughter rang softly against the dunes, blending into the silence without breaking it. Elders walked steadily, staffs pressing into the sand, their faces calm, no longer burdened by fear or doubt. The hum they carried was softer now, almost a whisper, yet stronger than ever. It needed no volume, no force. It simply was steady as breath, unbroken as the desert itself. The traveler walked at the front, lantern swaying, his chest thrummed, slow, calm, as though his very being had become a spiral thread of the silence. His steps did not press against the sand, they blended with it. He felt no separation between himself and the desert. He was part of it. By midday, the sun blazed overhead. Once, this heat would have weighed heavy on their shoulders. Once, the shimmer of mirages would have confused them, left them doubting the path. But now, when the heat pressed, they did not resist, they breathed it in. When the mirages shimmered, they did not fear illusions. They knew the truth was not in what eyes alone could see, but in what the silence carried. And so they walked, steady, unbroken. The desert no longer tested them, it welcomed them. That evening, they reached the hollow where they had once camped during the storm. The villagers paused, remembering the fear, the doubt, the heavy silence that had nearly broken them. But now, standing in the same place, they saw it differently. Children laughed as they set their lanterns in a circle. Elders hummed softly as they lowered themselves into the sand. The traveler placed his lantern in the center, its flame pulsing calm. Silver spirals curled outward, brushing each face with soft glow. The elder gazed around, his eyes warm. "The storm did not break us," he said quietly. "It shaped us. It carried us here." The villagers nodded, their hum deepening. The silence around them pulsed in rhythm, no longer heavy. It was gentle, like a friend. Days passed, the dunes rolled on, but the villagers never faltered. When wind rose, they sang. When heat pressed, they breathed. When silence stretched vast, they embraced it. Every step, every breath, was part of the spiral now, and slowly, the land began to change. The dunes grew smaller, valleys deepened, patches of scrub and stone appeared once more. The desert's edge approached, not with sudden shift, but with gradual unfolding. The villagers' hum grew lighter, their flames curling higher, as though they knew what waited beyond. One evening, as the sun sank low, the traveler crested a ridge. He stopped, his lantern raised, chest thrumming calm. Before him stretched the familiar sight, their village, the low roofs, the narrow paths, the old well at the center. It was as it had always been in, yet it looked different, not because it had changed, but because they had. The villagers climbed the ridge behind him. Gasps and whispers filled the air. Children clapped their hands, elders bowed their heads, tears streaming silently. They had returned, but they were no longer the same. They entered their village at dusk. People came running, those who had not walked the spiral road, who had stayed behind in fear or doubt. Their eyes widened at the sight of lanterns glowing calm, flames curling in endless spirals. "What have you seen?" they whispered. "What have you brought back?" The elder smiled, placing his staff against the earth. "We have not brought BAFTRAs, we have brought back silence, and it will live here, among us, forever." The traveler lowered his lantern, setting it at the edge of the well. Its flame pulsed softly, spirals curling outward. Other villagers followed, placing their lanterns beside his dot. Soon the well glowed with spirals of silver, curling upward into the night sky. The entire village gathered, their hum rising, their breaths steady, and the silence answered not as emptiness, not as fear, but as peace. That night, they did not sleep in fear of what silence might hold. They slept in peace, carried by it, and when dawn broke, the spirals above the well still curled upward, steady, endless, alive. The village had always been quiet. Its streets were narrow, its walls made of clay, its paths winding gently between the houses. The well at the center had been their lifeline, its waters sustaining them for generations. But until now, its silence had felt heavy, uncertain, almost fragile, something that could break under fear, or vanish under doubt. Now, it was different. Now, the silence breathed. When the travelers returned, lanterns glowing in their hands, the entire village gathered at the well. Men, women, and children rushed forward, their eyes wide at the sight of silver spirals curling upward from the flames. They whispered in awe, in fear, in wonder, "What have you brought back? What did the desert show you?" The elder stepped forward, leaning on his staff. His voice was soft, but it carried. "We have not returned with riches. We have not returned with weapons, or crowns, or treasures of stone. We have returned with silence. And silence is more than absence, it is presence. It is memory. It is the voice of the desert, and the voice of us." The villagers listened, their faces trembling with questions. Some believed, some doubted, some simply waited, as if their hearts were still walking the dunes. The traveler knelt by the well. He placed his lantern at its edge, its flame curling slowly upward. One by one, the others followed, setting their lanterns down until the well glowed with spirals of silver light. And when the flames swayed together, the silence shifted, not empty, not fearful, but whole. That night, the village did not sleep as it once had. They slept in rhythm. Children drifted into dreams with smiles on their lips, their lanterns glowing softly beside them. Elders rested their weary bones, no longer burdened by storms of doubt. Even those who had remained behind, fearful of the spiral road, now felt its rhythm humming in their chests. The silence did not vanish with the night. It lived in every corner of the village, woven into their breath. their hums, their lanterns. And so they dreamed, not of emptiness, but of spirals of light curling endlessly into the horizon. Days turned into weeks. The desert remained as vast as ever, its dunes rolling on beneath the sun. Yet to the villagers, it no longer loomed as a barrier. They looked upon it with calm eyes, knowing its silence was not their enemy, but their mirror. They tended their fields, carried water from the well, sang softly to their children, and always, the rhythm of silence moved through them. Every evening, they gathered at the well. They lit their lanterns, flames pulsing in soft spirals, and hummed together. Their voices blended into one steady sound, carrying across the dunes. And each night, as the stars rose, they saw faint spirals shimmer at the horizon, as though the city of flames still watched, still breathed with them. The silence had not been left behind, it had come home. The traveler no longer walked alone, where once he had been a wanderer, searching the dunes for meaning. Now he walked among his people, lantern swaying calm. He was no longer only a seeker, he was a thread in the great weaving of silence. Sometimes, when dawn stretched pale light across the dunes, he would stand at the village's edge, gazing out into the desert. He would remember the storm, the whispering wind, the endless climb toward the glowing horizon. He would remember the gates of flame and the great lantern towering into the stars. And as he breathed, chest thrumming steady, he would smile, for he knew now the desert had not given them something new. It had revealed what had always been within them. One evening, as the villagers gathered at the well, a child tugged at the elder's robe. "Will we ever walk the spiral road again?" she asked, her eyes wide, her lantern swaying faintly. The elder smiled, bending low, his eyes shimmering with gentle light. "Perhaps, perhaps not. But the spiral road was never only in the desert. It is here, in our steps, in our breath, in our silence. Every road we walk is part of it." The child nodded slowly, gazing into her lantern's flame. Its spirals curled upward, soft and steady, brushing her cheek. She smiled. The elder rose, lifting his staff toward the well. "The desert did not end when we left its dunes. It walks with us, and as long as we carry silence, we are never far from its heart." Seasons passed, the fields ripened with harvest, the well flowed steady, the village thrived, and always, the silence remained. When disputes arose, villagers paused, lanterns lit, hums steady, and silence softened their hearts, weaving them back together. When children quarreled, they were taught to sit by the well, their lanterns glowing, until silence reminded them of their shared rhythm. When elders grew weak, they lay down with lanterns beside their beds, spirals curling upward until their final breath carried them into the silence they had always known. And when storms swept across the dunes, the villagers no longer feared them. They lit their lanterns, hummed steady, and let the silence guide them through. Their lives were no longer scattered threads. They were one spiral, endless and alive. The traveler grew older. His hair turned silver, his steps slowed, but his flame never wavered. On his final evening, he walked to the well. The villagers gathered, lanterns glowing, their hum rising soft and steady. He knelt by the water, setting his lantern at the edge. Its flame pulsed calm, spirals curling upward into the night. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder. "You carried us when silence was heavy, and now, silence carries you." The traveler closed his eyes, chest thrumming one last steady rhythm, and with a breath, he let go. His flame rose higher, spirals curling upward, blending into the stars. The villagers bowed their heads, their hums steady, their lanterns swaying in rhythm. The silence embraced him, not as ending, but as return. Years became generations. The village changed, but the silence never left. Children grew into wanderers, elders into guardians. And always, the spiral flame glowed at the well. Travelers came and went, carrying whispers of storms, markets, distant lands. But when they reached the village at the desert's edge, they found not fear, not doubt, but calm. They found a people who lived not against silence, but with it. Some stayed, setting down their burdens, their lanterns joining the circle at the well. Others left, carrying silence into the world beyond the dunes. The spiral road never ended, it simply unfolded, step by step, flame by flame, silence by silence. And so the story was not finished. It was never meant to be finished, for the silence does not end. Just as the desert does not end, just as the spiral does not end, it carries on, in every step, every breath, every flame that sways against the night. The villagers of the desert walked at once, and in doing so, they found not emptiness, but eternity. And as the stars pulsed above, spirals curling faintly across the sky, the silence whispered softly, endlessly, always, you are not lost. You are carried.